buffer here.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is April 11th, 2024, and this is our special council meeting. Laurie, can I get roll call, please?
Mayor Young.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brandon.
Here.
Councilmember Painter.
Here.
Councilmember Sartory.
Here.
Councilmember French.
Here.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and now I'll hand it over to Keith.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is the village's annual reorganization meeting. And the next item on the agenda is communication from citizens. I want to explain, this is your opportunity to make any public comments that you have regarding everything else that's on the reorganization agenda. So we'll be swearing in council members French, Brandon, and Sartory. Then we'll be reorganizing, and the council will be appointing a mayor and a vice mayor for the next year, and then there will be council remarks and adjournment. So if anybody has any public comment that they wish to make regarding any of those items, now would be the time to make those comments. I don't know if we have any comment cards. Is there any? We have no cards, but is there anybody who wanted to make a public comment regarding those matters that we're going to be dealing with right now? It does not appear that there is, so we will move on to agenda item number 1, which is the council oaths of office for seat 1, Mr. French, seat 3, Ms. Brandon, and seat 5, Mr. Sartory. And I believe the clerk will be administering those oaths.
So you can go ahead and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Laurie Brandon,
Jayson.
do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida against all enemies, domestic or foreign, and that I will bear true faith, loyalty, and allegiance to the same, and that I am entitled to hold office under the Constitution, and that I will faithfully perform all the duties of the office of council member seat
C5.
on which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations. There, if you can sign it, and I'll get it from you after the meeting. And then it's Aquesta style. We have something for Jayson.
All right, congratulations. We now have a fully constituted council for the next year. The next item on the reorganization meeting agenda is the appointment of one council member to serve as mayor for the next year under our charter. At this meeting, the council is obliged to appoint one of your members as mayor for the next year. So this time I would call for nominations for the seat of mayor for the 2024-2025 year.
Mr. Davis, I'd like to nominate Molly Young for mayor.
Thank you.
Ms. Young, do you accept that nomination?
I do, thank you.
Are there any other nominations at this time? There do not appear to be any other nominations. By virtue of the fact, does anybody oppose, anybody on the council in opposition to Molly Young being named as mayor for the upcoming 2024-2025 year?
No.
If not, then by unanimous acclamation, Mayor Young, you are the village's mayor again for 2024-2025. Congratulations. In the same fashion, the village council by charter is also required to appoint one of its members to serve as vice mayor for the same 2024-2025 year. So at this time, I would, Mayor Young is not eligible to serve in that capacity, but of the other four of you, I would call now for nominations for one of you to serve the office of vice mayor.
I'd like to nominate Patrick Painter.
Mr. Painter's been nominated. Do you accept that nomination?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations for the office of vice mayor at this time?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Rick Sartory.
Mr. Sartory, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the office of vice mayor? There better not be, because then it starts getting really complicated. All right, then what we will do, I will ask for a vote. We'll take them in the order that the nominations were made. And I think it would probably be best to do a roll call vote so that we know exactly what we have. Roll call vote for Patrick Painter to serve as the village's vice mayor for the next 2024-2025 year.
Okay. Mayor Young,
No.
Vice Mayor Brandon,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
You know, this is odd, but I'm gonna say no. I'm good.
Councilmember Sartory,
No.
Councilmember French.
No.
Okay, the motion fails 4-1. So in the same fashion, ask for a roll call vote on the nomination of Mr. Sartori to serve as vice mayor for the 2024-2025 year.
Mayor Young,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brandon,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Sartory,
Yes.
Councilmember French.
Yes.
That is unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Sartori. You will serve as vice mayor. All right, so I think I have completed my role in the reorganization meeting. I would turn it back over now to Mayor Young for council remarks.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, with that, I'll open up for council remarks. I will go ahead and start. First of all, I want to thank the outgoing Vice Mayor Brandon for your support this past year. I know anytime I was not able to do something, she always showed up and was there for me. And so, you always support the village. Your heart is in it. And I really thank you for your service in the Vice Mayor role this past year. And Jayson, welcome. Patrick, another year. And Vice Mayor Sartory, I'm really looking forward to you serving the Vice Mayor next to me and being there for support this upcoming year. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. French. And I look forward to our hard-working year with all of you guys. We have a lot to do, so let's get to work.
Thank you. Go to the line.
Sure.
I would like to take an additional moment and thank God, my family and friends for just supporting me my entire life. A lot of my family's here, friends, colleagues that are friends as well, and I do appreciate the support on, I guess, a journey that has been my life. And I would just ask that everyone is here that supports me, continue to help support and mentor me, especially through a position like this. Public position can be tough on the individuals up here and their families as well. So thank you, babe, for always staying by me in positions I've served in this way, because it takes a lot to be up here and serve the public, which is very honorable, and I'm humbled to be here. I would ask all of you to help support and mentor me over this time. I will probably make mistakes, so please give me a phone call and let me know respectfully that I'm making a mistake, and I will absolutely listen. Thank you.
Well, congrats, Councilmember French. That is awesome. Congrats, Mayor Young, again. And Laurie, you're awesome. Thank you for doing that. Congrats, Vice Mayor Sartori. Now, all I'll say is I think this past year we've had a really solid council. We've all, I think, generally worked very well together, and I don't see that changing at all with the addition of Councilmember French. So I'm just excited for another year. I think, Rick, you'll do an awesome job as Vice Mayor, and I'm just looking forward to it.
Thank you. Mayor, congratulations. Vice Mayor, thank you for your service. You did a wonderful job. And welcome to Jayson French. I know you'll do a fantastic job. And to Patrick, I'll miss not sitting next to you, but.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
And last year at this time, I made a comment that I would never legislate village politics on social media. And I'll make that pledge to you again. I will not do that. There's a time and a place to legislate politics, and it's here in this chamber. It's face-to-face, it's on a telephone call, or it's in an email. Not in an environment that becomes unruly like social media. During this campaign, I did walk around almost every home in Tequesta. Ended up knocking on about 650, every neighborhood, let me qualify that. Knocked on over 650 doors with my wife, thank you, Maura, and spoke with hundreds of people. The feedback that I got and that I received was very consistent. The fabric of Tequesta is what makes Tequesta truly Tequesta. Not negative energy, not misinformation, not misleading information, and definitely not lies. Plenty were told about me, my family. My wife was attacked, and that is not what this village is about. The majority of the people that voted to say, we support people with vision. We support people that are willing to go out and stick their neck out and to talk to people and not hide behind social media. I went to people's homes to confront them if they had a question or they were given misinformation. I went to see them. They may not have been happy, but they heard it from me. They heard my version of the truth, not somebody else's interpretation of my truth. And what I heard in talking, and again, knocking on 650 doors and talking to hundreds of people, tons of businesses, was that the people of Tequesta want to keep Tequesta just like it is. They reject negative campaigning. They want to stick to the facts. They want to stick to your voting record. And they want somebody they can talk to and not disagree with. Disagreement is not discord. Disagreement is an opportunity to understand where the other person's coming from. And that's how I will always govern. I made you that promise last year. I'll make you that promise again. You want to call me a week before the vote, the day before the vote, I will not only tell you how I'm going to vote, I will tell you why I am voting that way. And if we have disagreement, again, that is not discord. Let's talk about it. Let's exchange information, and so I know where you're coming from and you know where I'm coming from. So it's a civilized conversation, not some spiral downward on a social media platform that nobody wins with. So I'm proud that I was reelected with 61% of the vote. I'm proud to serve with these people up here. And again, you will know how I govern because of what I told you tonight. And if I ever don't do that, you hold me accountable. Because this is not what, our village is better than what happened. It really is. Our village has a fabric that we want to maintain. And I appreciate everybody's opportunity to be up here again. And I look forward to serving next to our mayor, Mayor Molly Young. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Okay, and very quickly, before I call for a motion to adjourn, we do want to recognize Mr. Tom Bradford. Do you have a plaque? Right? Okay. Thank you so much for your service, for filling the vacancy. We did give you the Abby Brennan Mayor Award, so you know your history here goes back quite some time, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much.
This picture's for you, Tom. This one's for you.
I figured this out.
To the right.
Oh, that's down. The lefty trying to go up. Yeah. I think that's as much as you get right there.
All right, I'll take it.
Congrats, Tom.
And if you want to keep it back.
Okay, and with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Do
We have to read.
I need to, oh, we need to move our seats. Okay, quick pause and then we'll start the next meeting.
Kick break.
You stay.
Oh,
Real man.
I was just trying to let everyone know.
That's what I thought I
Switch
could
over,
do.
first get into the nitty gritty,
Sounds right.
take off.
I could have made it far more awkward.
Yep.
I'm four. I don't have to move.
He's one.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, there's like that, my 20-month-old son, you can't take your eye off him for a second. Our 4-year-old, you can kind of let her do her thing for the most part. But
I think I need this in here. Thoughts? Oh. Again, they take them all up first.
The beauty of it. I got it.
Thank you.
Sign yours it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Yeah, we don't.
I see what he's saying.
Oh, gee.
Oh, you're fine. No, it's fine.
keep you all on your toes.
Okay.
It is. You can go up.
I already did it. That's why we got the chairs.
All right, it is 6:19 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is April 11th, 2024. It's a regular council meeting. Laurie, can I get roll call?
Mayor Young,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sartory,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Painter,
Here.
Councilmember French.
Here.
And the invocation and pledge of allegiance will be led by Councilmember Painter.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Young. Good evening, everyone. If you could bow your heads, if you so choose. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this opportunity to gather here tonight, surrounded by so many wonderful people from our community, to give thanks and discuss the future of our village. Lord, we thank you for the abundance of blessings you have bestowed upon us, and we ask that you keep everyone in our village, especially our first responders, safe and healthy, and provide us with opportunities so that we may provide opportunities for others. Let us strive for greatness in all that we do, and remind us to always count our blessings. During a time with so much opportunity for our village, there's also a great deal of uncertainty in the world around us, and so many challenges that we will inevitably have to face in the future. For that reason, Lord, we ask that you be a beacon of light, our hope, and the rock on which we stand, so that we may glorify you in all that we do. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Council, if you guys don't mind, before we move on in the agenda, I would like to take a moment to recognize an important figure from our community, if that's okay?
Yeah.
So, as some of you may know, Tom Paterno, a longtime resident in Tequesta, passed away on March 29th, 2024, at the age of 65. Tom was a dedicated public servant who served our community with an unwavering commitment. He sat on Village Council from March 2005 to March 2019, making a significant impact during his tenure. His fellow council members appointed him vice mayor from April 2006 to March 2007, and again from March 2009 to March 2011. He was then appointed mayor, a role he held from March 2011 to March 2013. Beyond his official duties, Tom was known for his love of the village. In one of his early interviews in the village's newsletter, Smoke Signals, Tom shared a heartwarming story about his first years as a Tequesta resident. During a time when his house was under renovation and he had nowhere else to store Christmas presents, his new neighbors came to his aid. This act of kindness deeply touched him and exemplified the spirit of community that he cherished in Tequesta. Tom often spoke of Tequesta as his paradise, emphasizing the exceptional parks, services, and most importantly, the people that made the village special. He believed that it was a neighborly attitude of the residents that truly set Tequesta apart. Tom is survived by his wife, Susan Paterno, and his children, Ryan, Brianne, and Susan. He will be deeply missed by his family, friends, and the entire Tequesta community. Council, is there anything you'd like to add?
That's what I think about for a second. Sorry, guys. So there was, I think I worked with Tom for like 2 years. And it's so hard to think I'm not here. So I'm sorry for you guys for your loss. Because he was a great man. So, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on the agenda, can I get approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, presentations. Our first presentation tonight is a proclamation proclaiming May 4th and 5th as American Legion Auxiliary Poppy Day.
Whereas the red poppy is a symbol of the American veteran sacrifices, and whereas the poppy honors every veteran who fought and died in the service of his or her country, and whereas each poppy is handmade by disabled veterans at the Bay Pines Veterans Administrative Medical Center in St. Petersburg, Florida, and whereas all monies that are collected are used exclusively for the local veterans and their families. Now therefore, Mayor Molly Young, Mayor of the Village of Tequesta, proclaims May 4th and 5th, 2024 as Poppy Days in the Village of Tequesta, and in doing so urges all citizens to join in a national effort to raise the awareness of the men and women who gave their all for our freedom.
Thank you. And I just want to say I have a collection of poppies, and I keep them in view at my office desk, and it's a great reminder every time I look at them of the service from our veterans. Okay, presentation 2 tonight is a proclamation proclaiming May 2024 as Building Safety Month.
Whereas the Village of Tequesta is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and essential role of our homes, buildings, and infrastructure play both in everyday life and when disasters strike. Whereas our confidence in the resilience of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. Whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, a nonprofit that brings together local, state, territorial, tribal, and federal officials who are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. Whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as hurricanes, storms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us of safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. Whereas Mission Possible, the theme for Building Safety Month 2024, encourages us all to raise awareness about building safety on a personal, local, and global scale. Whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now therefore, Mayor Molly Young of the Village of Tequesta, in recognition of this event, does hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 as Building Safety Month.
Thank you. And just the proclamation said it right. I think sometimes our building departments are the, what did it say? It was the unknown protectors of public safety, because you are kind of behind the wings and you do a lot with, building review and inspections and making sure everything is constructed safely. So, and I know from experience it's a very tough job as well. So we very much value and appreciate everything our building department does. Agenda item 3 is a proclamation proclaiming April 26, 2024 as Arbor Day. I don't think we're going to read that in the record tonight, but there will be an event that I think it's already been posted on social media on April 26th, so we will read the proclamation then. Okay, moving on, agenda item 4, Annual General Employee Pension Board Update.
Good evening, Mayor Young, fellow council members, village manager, village attorney. I'm Ben Ward. I, in February, was elected chairman of your General Employees Pension Fund Board, and been serving since 2016, and it's been a pleasure to serve the employees of the village of Tequesta. Tonight, I'm going to present a brief summary of the fund and the performance of it, and give you a little information about what's going on and what's going to happen in the future. Our last regular meeting was February 5th, and our next meeting is May 6th. Now, I know that's just general information, but what I'd like to extend to the council and to the general public, our meetings are available to view via internet, and so if anyone wishes to either participate in person or participate via computer, we have that accommodation. So if you want to see a lot of numbers, tune in. I'm going to provide some investment performance first by Dana Investment Advisors. They're the folks that invest some of our equities, as well as some of our fixed income. They are our active manager for those investments. And just to give you a summary, our equity returns were 13.03% versus an index of 11.69 for the quarter ending December 31st. Our 3-year average with the equities has been 7.57 against the index of 10%, and the 5-year average is 14.15 against an index of 15.69. Since they've been managing those investments since 2005, they've achieved a 9.58 return against an index of 9.99. The fixed income assets that they manage for the quarter returned 5.11 against an index of 5.50, and then the 3-year average was a negative 1.85 against an index of negative 2.06. The 5-year average is 1.13 against an index of 1.14. Since they've been managing since 2005, the annual return has been 2.84 against an index of 2.87. Our investment advising firm is ANCO. Jennifer Gainford is our representative, and she provided their quarterly report As of the end of the quarter, our market plan has a value of $9,435,721. At the end of the quarter, the asset allocation is, as you can see, 54.8% for equity, domestic equity, that's U.S. companies. International equities at 13.1%, fixed income, domestic fixed income at 19.1%, global fixed income of 3.9%, and then we also have real estate investments that are 8.4% of our fund. Then we have a little bit of cash too. As far as who manages our assets, as I mentioned, Dana is our active manager, and they manage 26.9% of our equities, and they also manage 19.1% of our fixed income. We do have 27.9% is in an index fund, so that is, we moved funds into that 2-3 years ago because it was a lower cost to manage the fund, and it's producing similar results as what we get from Dana Investments. And for comparison, the benchmarks I talked about, those are all the various benchmarks for the different categories. And then at the bottom there for the total fund, those are the various benchmarks that we use to judge our performance for those categories. As far as asset allocation, I had mentioned the numbers before. You can see our asset allocation is across the top there, and then you can look at the various percentiles and how investments are made by pension funds across the country. We do not have any alternative investments, so that's so the rest of the investment or fund is spread across those activities or investments. We strive for approximately 60% equities, 30% fixed income, and 10% real estate. As quarterly returns for the total fund was 8.2% against a benchmark of 8.45. Domestic equities was 12.58 against a benchmark of 12.07. International equities was 8.39 against a benchmark of 9.82. And fixed income was 5.08 against a benchmark of 5.5. And global fixed income was 7.8 against a benchmark of 7.32. Real estate has struggled, and the quarterly returns for the real estate was a negative 7.78 against a benchmark of negative 5.23. Overall, our additional investment performance, the overall plan had a return of 8.2%, which puts us in the 56th percentile. Our annualized one-year return is 12.48, puts us in the 69th percentile. The annualized three-year return is 3.49, puts us in the 62 percentile, and the annualized five-year return is 9.05 in the 33 percentile. Since inception, actually is considered a young fund. We started it in 2000. The annualized return is 6.45%, which puts us in the 26th percentile. Every year we have a actuarial report prepared, or valuation, and overall our actuaries states that our fund is in excellent actuarial status for the following reasons. There's a low contribution rate relative to general employee pension funds in Florida. The plan is well funded. There's a low level of volatility in the required village contribution rate, and reasonable assumptions, including an assumed rate of return of 6.9%. And if you look at our, since inception, it's 6.45, so I think we're pretty close. As far as the actuarial valuation as of September 30th, 2023, the fund is well funded at 99.3% as of September 30th. The village contribution as of October 2024 is 10.09% of payroll, and that's roughly $442,104. There's been no change in the benefits provided to the employees in the funds since the previous valuation. The village contribution rate increased $90,063, which is a 1.34% of payroll since last year. The primary reasons for the change is lower than expected investment earnings, 4.8% on an actuarial basis compared to 6.65%, and higher than expected salary increases. Salary increases were 6.6% compared to their previous actuarial valuation was based on 5.2%. The market values of the assets are $603,591 less than the actuarial value of the assets. The difference will be gradually recognized over the next 4 years. The amount actually recognized is subject to change based on the fund's performance. So if we have a good year in the stock market, contribution this village may have to make could be less. The market value was the base. If market value was the basis of the contribution, the village contributions would be 12.15% of payroll, and the funded ratio would be 92.9%. So actuarial analysis or valuation puts us at a better status than actually basing it strictly on a cash basis. Other matters that were discussed at our meeting on February 5th, ENCO is our investment consultant. They have advised us that they entered into a strategic partnership with Mariner LLC, and I confirmed that they did complete that partnership as of April 2nd, 2024. The new name will be known as Mariner Institutional. Mariner Institutional will continue to exist as a separate SEC-registered investment advisor. But it will be the same service provider, same contract and terms will remain in place with the village funds. Mariner is a national wealth advisor with over 1,500 associates. Our plan administrator or fund administrator, which is resource centers, they can have an audit completed of their operation every year, and that was completed as of September 30th, 2023. It's a review of their internal controls of their organization, including testing to determine if there are any discrepancies. So they have, they're the ones that when employees wish to start receiving their retirement benefits, Resource Centers is the one that starts the process and does all the paperwork and stuff to get that determination made. But they have a lot of, we constantly are quizzing them about their security because that's always an issue, and they continue to update their computer systems just like everyone else for cybersecurity. So it's a constant question we ask them, and we feel confident that they're doing a really good job. Our board attorney, Bonnie Jensen, also advised us that the financial disclosure form that we have to provide to the state every July is now going to be online, and so we'll be doing that as well, just like all of you. And then our travel policy was updated so that our reimbursement follows the GSA scheduled rates. And with that, I will, I just wanted to make a mention that you saw the negative numbers relative to our real estate investments. We have advised our investment consultant and they have informed our real estate fund that we wish to pull our funds out of their portfolio. And, but because real estate's not liquid, you can't do that overnight like stocks. It's a process, and once we receive our funds back from the real estate investment, our investment consultant has given us options as to where we place those funds into another real estate investment. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Council, any comments or questions?
No comments. Thank you, though. That was very informative, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. The plan, it looks like it's underperformed since inception. And you said it was an active plan, so my question is, for the risk that's out there, why not a passive plan if we're only talking about a few basis points of, well, underperforming even, not even outperforming? And well, I guess my question is, do you feel that the risk is proper for an underperforming plan since inception?
Well, that's probably more of a, probably have to consult with our consultants relative to that.
And maybe I could follow up with, is there underperformance including fees or not including fees?
Those are, what you see is net of fees.
Okay.
I mean, we worry about performance all the time. And we actually have, was provided information at our last meeting relative to our large cap funds and how that's being managed. And at our next meeting, we'll be discussing whether we want to make some changes there in an effort to try and, improve our performance. It's a fine line, some years we can come here and say we're doing really well because the stock market goes crazy. Last year, the market did definitely come down somewhat, but it, since the beginning of the year has performed had performed. The last few weeks it's slowed down again. But so, we keep an eye on it, and we do our best to pick the best investments.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And maybe more my guidance or recommendation when we're using a lot of town funds for these investments is if the investment is risky and within reason but not going to give us the performance, possibly the passive option might be an improved choice over time. I'm not an expert at all. I'm just looking at the long-term effects.
Right. Yeah, there's part of our, as I mentioned earlier, we're in the Vanguard Index Fund, and one reason we went into that was we thought that we could get the same return with that with a less cost, and that's exactly what's happened. So whether we make additional investments like that and go less active management, which is what Dana does, approximately, I think 46-7% of our fund is actively managed, whereas the others are more in index funds and stuff like that. If performance continues to lag, we may have to make those type of choices.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
I just would like to make a comment, and we do our best, but the employees have skin in the game too. Most of you probably know that they all contribute 5% of their salary on an annual basis to the fund. So there are 2 employees that sit on the board, so we're all trying to make sure that the fund does well.
Ben, thank you for coming. Having sat on the Public Safety Officer Pension Board for almost 2 years, I know that ANCO, our investment advisor, is top notch, and I've got confidence in them. And I know that there's a lot of debate and discussion at those respective meetings, public safety officer and general employee. So I trust their valuation, and I know you guys are doing a great job, and it's not always easy. But between a 92 actuarial and a 99, investment funded status, I mean, I think we're still in good shape,
Yeah, last year I think we were 102% actuarial evaluation, but as you know, the market
Yeah.
slowed down at the end of the year, or for a while. So
Yeah.
that affects all of us, not just this fund.
Thank you for what you do.
All right.
I know
Thank
it's
you.
tough sitting on that board and especially coming
Well,
here. So
I
thank you.
enjoy it. It's I live here, so I want to try and give back to the community. So thank you very much.
I don't have any questions, but just second what everyone said, thank you for the time you give back to the village serving on this board.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ben.
All right.
Okay, agenda item 5, accept the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ending September 30th, 2023. Jeff.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. It is my honor to introduce our audit partner, Mr. Wade Sansbury. He's with the auditing firm of Malden and Jenkins, and he's our independent CPA that does an annual audit. And Malden and Jenkins is a top shelf regional firm, so it's quite large, has a lot of resources. So with no further ado.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members, Mr. Village Manager. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you all again tonight, and for allowing us to serve this great village. I have a very brief presentation. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. If y'all have any questions at any point in time, if you want to just raise your hand, that's fine. I'll stop. It won't bother me at all. Let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. So just to start out, we've got some brief information about who Malden and Jenkins is. We are a large regional accounting firm founded in 1918, so we have over 100-year history here in the Southeast. We do currently serve over 700 governments, including the village here in the Southeast, including over 170 entities that annually receive the GFOA certificate, as does the village. This is just a chart kind of giving some of that same information. We are nationally recognized, and we are a top 100 firm in the country. The village does choose to prepare and submit to the state an ACFR, an annual comprehensive financial report. Only annual financial statements are required from the state. So the ACFR is above and beyond what's actually required. You should be commended by that. It does have these three main overall sections: the introductory section, the financial section, as well as the statistical section. Of course, as you know, Malden & Jenkins was contracted to perform an audit and then to express an opinion based on our audit on your financial statements. We've completed that process, and we've rendered to you all an unmodified opinion. This is a clean opinion and the type of opinion that you wish to receive each and every year. In our opinion, the financial statements do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the village as of and for the year ended. I also do want to remind everyone that the financial statements are the representation and the responsibility of management. Again, our responsibility was to express an opinion. In the back of the report, this year there's only one compliance report. This is what we call the Yellow Book report. If there were any kind of findings or material weaknesses, significant deficiencies of any kind, those would be reported there. Very happy to say that we had none once again this year. Jeff, his staff, they do a great job taking care of your books and records all throughout the year, and they certainly do a really good job in helping us get through the overall audit process on a timely basis as well. This year, the village did not receive and spend more than $750,000 in federal or state awards, so we were not required to perform a federal or state single audit. But again, an overall very good year. Your total net position of the village did increase about $4.5 million, so a very good positive increase. Here I have just several required communications. I'm not going to go over all of those. We always choose to do that in a written format. You can do it orally. We choose to do that in written format, and we put all of those in what we call our AD&A, the Auditor's Discussion and Analysis, not to be confused with the MD&A, which is the Management's Discussion and Analysis. And I always just remind you all that within the ACFR document itself, which is a very large, long, complex document, that if you don't read the whole thing, do read the MD&A. This is written by management and gives a good, concise information on how things changed from 2022 to 2023, as well as the reasoning behind it. Would like to point out that we are independent with regards to the village. We take that very, very seriously. Then I've got just some high-level information as for the village for 2023 as compared to 2022. Your spending per resident was right at about $2,800, which was very comparable to 2022. Your overall general fund balance was right at $8 million, not a whole lot of change from 2022. Your debt per resident did come down about a little over $100 per resident. You do have about 95 total employees with average salary information as well as your percent of budget information. This is the same info as of 2022. This slide just gives you a little bit of information on the revenues of the general fund, where the funds come from, the majority of which are certainly from your overall property taxes, about $9.5 million. And then this slide shows where that money goes. Entities your size, typically about 50% or more does go to public safety. You all fall in line with that, with about $8 million being spent annually on public safety. This is a 5-year history of your general fund balance. The last couple of years, it's remained consistent, right about $8 million. That is a very good, strong, healthy fund balance for the village as of year end. Certainly much better than in 19 and 2020. You all do have 3 different business type activities and business funds: your water fund, stormwater, and refuse and recycling. I bring this slide up just to point out that you all are charging appropriate rates to cover the cost of those operations of those activities. So I always want to make sure that we're doing that when it comes to the business type, because again, those are supposed to support themselves and not be subsidized by any other form of revenues. This is just a comparison of revenues between 2023 and 2022 for those 3 funds. Again, the water saw an increase, the other 2 were very consistent. Overall operating expenses, water fund and stormwater actually saw a slight decrease in 2023 as compared to 2022. As I did mention before, we have our AD&A, the Auditor's Discussion Analysis. That's a completely different document. Again, we list out all the required communications there. If there were any kind of findings or any kind of recommendations for improvement, we would list those there. We do have a lot of GASB statements that are coming down the pipeline that we list all of those out there for your attention. Most of those I don't think are going to have a whole lot of effect on the village, but those are there for your reading. Additionally, that's not listed here, we do offer free CPE and training to all of our clients. I know that the Finance Department has been able to benefit from that. Certainly anyone on this board, if there are any of our offerings, if you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to attend those as well. That's really all that I wanted to go over tonight. Do you all have any questions for me?
Thank you. Council? No? All right. Thank you so much for your time and the presentation, and kudos to our Finance Department. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving along to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You know, open up for communications from citizens. Laurie, do you have any cards?
Yes, Bethany Humpage.
Okay, right off the bat, I'm very, very nervous.
Okay.
So good evening, council.
Good evening.
I am very uncomfortable speaking to an audience, so please bear with me. I have an issue that I think needs to be addressed by our citizens and council. I would like this issue to be recorded. I voted for Rick Sartory in our local election. I had done my research and spoken to several well-respected citizens of our village. I then called Mr. Sartory and asked for a yard sign. He stopped by my home and we talked for half an hour. I was extremely impressed with his ideas and visions and his professional attitude. Mr. Sartory and his wife were nice enough to attend a huge benefit at the American Legion on March 16th. The benefit was for one of our own with serious cancer issues. The next day on the message board of Nextdoor, which I never go on and will probably never go on again, I posted my appreciation to Mr. Sartory and his wife. This comment resulted in unending criticisms from Jessica Namath. I am never on social media. I was completely taken aback by the harassing and brutal attacks by said person and her band of minions. I thought free speech, especially civil free speech, was a good thing. I guess it's only allowed if you agree with her. I was attacked for being a former Tequesta police officer. She went on a rant about Mr. Sartory being backed by our police and fire departments. She proceeded with untruths. She said Mr. Sartory, police, and fire departments were behind pushing for big development. Her reasoning for this was that big development brought in more tax dollars and therefore their salaries would increase. I told her she was absurd. A little footnote here. I am personally very proud of our police and fire departments. We are a very fortunate village to have our own first responders. Our administration from top to bottom runs our village like a well-oiled machine, contrary to Ms. Namath's criticism of all. After the election, which she thankfully lost, she continued with her demeaning statements as how the bad guy won, and all of her minions chimed in. I hope this young woman never runs for office again. She's a bully and is not the caliber of person that we need for making good decisions. I understand that she's the chair for our EAC, Environmental Advisory Board. Hopefully that position will be corrected in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. All right, any other communications from citizen? Okay. Communications from council?
I'm good.
I have nothing tonight.
I have no comments.
Nope.
Okay, neither do I. Moving on to appointments. Agenda item 16, consider appointment of Tom Bradford to fill the EAC vacancy.
And this really comes from council's previous action to leave that position vacant. So now it's coming back to you to fill it in.
Okay. Council, any comments, questions? And I don't think we need Mr. Bradford to come up and speak to
No.
us.
Nope, nothing from me.
Okay, any public comment? Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you for serving again. Agenda item 17, consider appointment to fill the general employee pension board vacancy.
Okay, we have a vacancy due to the resignation of a member that was on the board. So we put it out for advertising, and Kyle Stone is our applicant for the position. So he's going to report to you. The position is to fill the remainder of the 2-year term, which expires on May 8th, 2025.
Thank you. Council?
No comment. We ready for motion?
Want to do public comment? Any public comment? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve Kyle Stone to take the general employee pension board vacancy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, standing reports. Village attorney.
No report, just, again, congratulations, council. Looking forward to a really good year coming up. Thank you.
Village manager.
In addition to the monthly reports, we also sent out the quarterly investment reports. You guys have that. If there's questions, please pass those on. I just want to applaud Jeff and his efforts with those investments. So appreciate Jeff and your effort with that. Been very successful the last 2 years or so. Staff will be bringing the strategic plan to council in May for adoption. Good news, in addition to the Remembrance Park grant for the FERDAP grant, the village did apply for a grant for Tequesta Park as well. So we've initially been granted, we haven't got the paperwork yet, for Tequesta Park as well, a $200,000 matching grant. If we choose to use it, we'll have to obviously budget for that and see if we can make that budget. It can't be, I don't think it's can be used to offset the appropriations that we were short, but I think there's plenty of improvements to Tequesta Park that we can make with that grant. So we will have that discussion during the budget process. Saturday, we have Shred It and Coffee with a Cop, starting at 9 o'clock. We hope people will come out and join us for that event. Village is holding an Arbor Day event, as the mayor mentioned, April 26th. The event will begin at 9:30. So we hope people will come out for that. I think that's just in addition to what Jay is trying to do. Jay is trying to get us back to being a tree city. And of course, the effort that Doug also made through direction of the EAC and support of the council with planting the trees in Tequesta. I think we planted over 60 trees. We're done with that project. I know there's still some maintenance that needs to be done to that project, but moving in that direction for the trees and the support of that project, I think the Arbor Day ties in nice to that. And then Palm Beach County did start with a project over on Beach Road. Some of you guys are aware of it. There's a parking project that they're doing along Beach Road over there near the recreation area. They did start that. We are trying to get additional information on the who, what, where, when, but we've been told it's going to be 3 weeks. I know Doug has reached out to try to get a more detailed plan, but expect some inconveniences over there for 3 weeks while the county, they're going to do some pavers and some parking over there, which we think will be a good improvement, but it'll be an inconvenience for a time. And so as soon as we get that information from the county, we will try to post that. As you guys know, Beach Road is a county road and maintained by the county, so that is not a village project, but we'll try to relay any information that we have. With that, you have my report.
Any questions for the manager? No, ma'am. Okay. Nope. Police Department.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, congratulations, Council, Village Manager. You have my notes before you for the monthly report. Just a couple things I want to highlight. As Jeremy spoke about, Coffee with a Cop this Saturday, 9 to 11. Our civilians firearms classes continue. We will have another one this Saturday as well from 8 to 4. So that will be going on as well. Once again, a full class. Vice Mayor Sartory, I know last time we talked about e-bike, and I don't want to get into a big speech, but since our last meeting, just so you know, we've stopped 7 individuals throughout the village with the e-bikes, educating, speaking in regards to our ordinance. Just to let you know, and I spoke to Jeremy about this, one of the issues that we come across is Jupiter is telling their kids to go on the sidewalk, not on the street. So, you know, it's kind of like an education part of it. So I've been talking to Chief England about it. I know his council is supposed to be, or having discussions about it, so he's gonna, I gave him our pamphlet and education-wise, but we haven't had any issues with ours. The kids have been given the pamphlets. We also, at the food trucks, we're giving them out to the kids as well as the parents. So we're trying to educate our community and just telling the kids just be mindful when there's pedestrians, obviously, on the sidewalk, because those things are pretty fast, so we are on it. Just want to let you know. And then one thing that you see here, and I just want to elaborate, is the Explorer program meetings. Next month, I'll be coming before you. We are starting post 357 of Police Explorers for the village of Tequesta. So we will be setting out recruiting. We're looking for kids 14 to 21. It's something that's been in the works for a while. We've had a lot of discussions. Having John Pruitt join us, he's been a big help with that, as well as Lieutenant Blanc. So we're looking forward to that and getting participation. Kind of encompass everything that we do with the Nautical Club and the Police Explorers, and kind of giving them an avenue into hopefully law enforcement or great careers in military. So
Awesome.
Love it.
And that's all I have for you.
Council?
Thanks, Chief.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you, ma'am.
Fire Department.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Village Council, Mr. Manager, Attorney, Village Clerk. You, of course, have my report in front of you. Some of the highlights this month, our guys have been doing Train the Trainer. And this month, we specifically focused on our Mayday procedures, basically how to rescue ourselves. We also continued with our new pumper training. I do expect it to be able to do the push-out or push-in ceremony for our new pumper, tentatively May 3rd. We also were able to celebrate Lieutenant Spurgeon's 25th anniversary with our department, one of our long-standing members. Later on in the month, firefighter Wickert was received the Firefighter of the Year award from the American Legion. And of course, some of you, I think, were at our Easter open house, which again was a tremendous turnout. and I know everybody enjoys it. That's one of those things we enjoy every year because it's really fun to see all the little kids out and just to be a part of the community. So we again focus on that community relationship. Later this month, we will be hosting water rescue. It's our Swiftwater 1 and 2 class. Dive Rescue International comes in and teaches it. We host, and we will have a couple of our members also going through that. So again, our Swiftwater rescue team, our surface water rescue team is expanding. We're trying to get our numbers up. A few years ago, we were at 3. We're hoping to get to 9 by the end of the year. So that's where we're at. And then I'll leave you with one other little bit of good news. State of Florida thought it'd be a good idea to come in and inspect our EMS program. So last Thursday, they did that. The state EMS inspection is well, quite thorough. They do records, all the records. They talk to the personnel. They look at the vehicles. They look at the equipment. They review all your protocols. And we pass with no deficiencies, which is what I expect. So we're very happy with that. And I'll take questions.
Thank you. Council?
No?
That's it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
See you again.
Okay, utilities.
Good evening, Marjorie Craig, Utilities Director. And just to hit the highlights here, we've been continuing on with water main number 4 because water main number 1 was deferred because of the costs, but we will be doing it. It's on the list. If you look towards the second page, you've got some pictures that have been taken by either our engineer on site or me. I'm an engineer, but the CEI engineer reviewing the site. I've gotten really, really good feedback from both my own staff and the Holtz Engineering, construction engineering inspector, saying that they really have their A-team on this. There have been a few things, but everything's moving along. They did provide an updated date, and I did request a catch-up plan to see, because I would like to still stick with that original final date. Beach Road Phase 2 is going to DEP. We've done a request for inclusion for the May meeting, and got a new employee, so we're nearly full. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Council?
No.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Trying to move things along. We've got the dashboard, money coming in, monthly revenue, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the regular agenda, there is no old business tonight. So under new business, item 22, consider approval of purchasing a utility task vehicle and trailer dedicated to code enforcement. Wayne?
Good evening, everyone. This is a discussion item considering the approval for a vehicle. As you know, this is for the turtle lighting enforcement that we've got on our ordinance as it exists on the books currently. We're currently in turtle season, which runs all the way through October 31st. The cost of which will not exceed, this includes the vehicle, the trailer, and getting it stored so it's protected from the elements. The UTVs are versatile vehicles capable of traveling on various terrains, including dirt, uneven terrain such as the beach shorelines. So investing in this vehicle would allow for code enforcement to be able to cover approximately 4,000 linear feet of beach area, allowing for more efficient and thorough monitoring. Presently, at this time, 2 of the staff members are already certified with sea turtle lighting certifications. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer that for you.
Thank you. Council?
I just have one for clarification.
Sure.
We're approving the amount of 15,000.
Up to.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Okay. Just the way I understand it, I just want to record, because I know public safety has a couple of these, but from what I understand, due to the funds that those are purchased with, that the building department can't use them?
Correct, and this also, it would require an officer to drive a vehicle. their vehicles, because it's a police assigned vehicle. So that would require a police officer plus a code officer salary considerations for both.
Okay, and then if we were to proceed with this, would any other departments be able to use this if
Sure.
needed? I mean, are there plans for that?
We'd
Because
be able to
realistically,
share.
this isn't going to be used that many times a year.
Correct, but it can be used as any other department will have access to it. Should utilities need something, it can also be used in those wooded areas if an extra vehicle is needed for that purpose as well. By the parks, so on and so forth. If fire needs a vehicle, it's available. So it will be hosed here, transported to the beach area for that purpose, and then brought back here.
Okay, and where do you access? Where are you going to access the beach? And do we need to
Coral, we've spoken with
the
Coral
county?
Cove.
Okay.
And that's where we'll pull in that point and on the county park.
So they're good with that. We don't need any formal approvals from the county to drive that on their beach.
Once I've had the informal discussion, the conversation with Parks and Rec, and once if this is approved, then I will pursue getting a more formal agreement to make sure that we don't have an issue with anyone, lifeguards or anybody saying, what are you doing here? Why are you accessing this portion?
Great, okay.
So, yes.
And then the amount request is simply just for the purchase of the vehicle. I mean, there's annual expected costs with any training to be able to operate it, insurance, maintenance. I mean, is there any idea of what the annual costs?
And the insurance and the maintenance annual costs on that is expected to be fairly minimal. It's already in my budget for maintenance of all vehicles. But again, this is just the initial cost of getting the vehicle, the trailer, and housing the vehicle. So it's not on the exterior, but more an interior environment.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, any public comment? Council? Any motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item, you're welcome. Agenda item 23, resolution number 07-24, authorizing agreement with the state of Florida Emergency Management for mutual aid in the event of a disaster.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council. As already stated, it's a mutual aid agreement during a declaration of emergency. So it constitutes an agreement with the state of Florida to receive or provide mutual aid. This replaces the 28 agreement that's already in place with the Village of DeQuesta in the state of Florida, which we've been signatories for many, many, many years. And it greatly enhances our ability to respond or recover after disasters. So I absolutely would like you guys to approve this. Do you have any questions?
If I just add, the reason why it's not on consent, because there's no cost to us now, but if we do provide assistance somewhere else, there's going to be some upfront costs. It may take us a while to recoup those funds, so just council being aware that we are signing to help others, but others can help us, and so I think it's, like the chief says, it's beneficial, almost needed, almost, so, but I wanted council to know that if we do help others, there may be some upfront costs that we'll recoup later down the road.
And I would add, we do maintain control over what we send, when we send, and when we're able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Council, any comments or questions?
Makes sense.
Just one question. Just want to confirm that this won't affect any of our response in the village during these emergencies for other areas.
Absolutely not. We take care of DeQuesta first before we consider sending anybody outside.
Understand. Thank you.
Okay, any public comment? Council, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 24, consider approval of the contract with EMS-MC for third-party EMS billing services.
Okay, so I'm back again. So again, this is a contract to outsource EMS billing. We have traditionally done this in-house. If approved, our vendor says we can expect an increase in revenue of 11.7% on a cash per transport. The cost of the contract is 5.25% based on collections. This cost would actually be less than what it's currently costing me to pay an overtime firefighter to do the job. So what I'm going to tell you here is it's increased revenue, decreased costs, and decreased workload. So adamantly for this one as well. Questions?
Council?
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me.
And just one quick question. Do you know what the estimated, because it's, their cost is based off the collections. Do you have any idea what the annual cost might be for that?
So based on the numbers that we gave them and collections, you're looking backwards, and we traditionally have trailed in that. So the last year that they had, I want to say we showed around $260,000 in collections. When you factor in their 11.7, it came up to 280, and I'm gonna estimate here, mid-280s, 285. So you're seeing a $25,000, $30,000 increase over what we were showing. So when you factor in that same number, I think the cost to outsource this was a little under 15 grand. So again, we should see an increase in revenue, we should see a decrease in cost, and of course, I'm transferring the workload to somebody else.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any public comment? Council, can I get a motion?
Make a motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Agenda item 25, consider approval of awarding the construction contract for Remembrance Park to E&F Florida Enterprises.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Village Council. I'm pleased to present this item to the council. This is for consideration of construction of Remembrance Park located at 483 Seabrook Road. On February 9th, we went out for a public bid. And then on February 16th, we had a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting. It was held here in Village Hall. And then we actually went out to a site meeting as well. On March 1st, we had the deadline for proposers to submit their questions. We had a handful of questions. There were 4 addendums in response to those questions received from the proposers. And then on March 11th, the proposal deadlines was the deadline. That's when proposals were due. At that time, we received 5 proposals, one from Creative Contracting Group, Lunicon Construction, National SWPPP Services, South Florida Building, Inc., and West Construction. At that time, we received the bids. The village clerk distributed the bids to our selection committee. On the selection committee was myself, Greg Corbett, Parks and Rec Director, and Jay Hubbish, Director of Community Services. That gives the selection committee a chance to review the documents that were submitted, the bids that were submitted. The selection committee then got together in a public forum on March 15th, where we sat and ranked the proposers. And the goal, the objective at that time was to pick contractors to come back and make a presentation to the selection committee. At that time, we selected 4 contractors: Creative Contracting Group, Lunicon Construction, National SWPP Services, and West Construction. South Florida Building Services was not selected, and that was because they didn't submit the mandatory qualification statement, so they weren't invited to the presentation meeting. So during that time, we selected those 4 contractors, and before we had a chance to meet and go through the presentations, National SWPP Services did not respond to our invitation to come make a presentation, so they were disqualified. So during the presentation and ranking meeting, each proposer had 20 minutes to come up and make a presentation, tell us about their company, why they're a good fit for the project. It was an open forum for them to present why their company would be a good fit for Tequesta, and then the selection committee had some questions as well. The basic criteria for the selection committee was the qualifications, similar projects, their staffing, their references, which is important, their subcontractors, any open and closed litigation cases, their overall presentation, and of course the cost. It's important to note Lunicon Construction did not show up for their presentation. They were scheduled, so they were disqualified at the meeting at the time they were supposed to present. After presentations, We had some questions for the presenters. We have a ranking sheet that I believe you have in your agenda there. And the basic categories were the total price, references from customers, similar services performed, and obviously a presentation. It was unanimous after scoring and listening to the proposers that the selection committee selected Creative Contracting Group. What I personally liked about them as well, they had extremely strong references. So when you look at the projects that they presented in their submittal, they had very similar work, not necessarily this dollar amount. So this will be the largest project that they've ever, the company has ever had. However, with that being said, I talked to the town of Jupiter and some other cities, and this is what they do all day long. The reason they're able to come in low is they don't sub out a lot of their work. They do all their work in-house. So they have staff that's going to come here and perform this job. They have all the equipment, they can do the earthwork, they can do the digging, they can set the basins. For a lot of these other general contractors, they're looking for subcontractors, and that drives up the cost. So I actually spent about a half hour on the phone with the town of Jupiter, and they've done a lot of work with the town of Jupiter, and they couldn't have been more positive about this company, how responsive they are. They come in on budget or under budget. They come in on time. They're extremely responsive to any questions they have or anything that may arise during a typical construction project. So they got A+ rating. Creative Contracting Group came in at 1.1769. We have budget for this project 1.25. It's also worth noting that they also came in just under our engineer's opinion of probable construction cost at about 1.2. So it's our recommendation to the Village Council to approve this contract. I know the manager mentioned earlier as well, we do have a $400,000 FERDAP grant, and once this is approved, the council approves this project, we will continue working on the commencement documents required with the grant coordinator, and then once we get that confirmation back from FERDAP, we'll move forward with the project. So I'm here to
That was a
answer-
$200,000 grant.
200,000, sorry. Thank you, sir.
I like where your head's at.
That's why you're there.
Thank you, Doug. Council, any questions or comments?
No, strong contract. It's a very, very good contract for the village.
Are the pavers around the flagpole in it? I didn't see it in the bid documents, so would that be a change order later? Because I know obviously we had discussion on that at our last workshop. Is that included or not in their scope?
Yeah.
It is included?
No, sorry, go ahead.
Not included.
The pavers were never included in the project. The plans had sod. It was up to the village to go back and determine, put together a paver plan, a donor plan, how much would the pavers cost, what is the village looking for. So that was never part of this project. We pulled that out early on in the design.
Okay, which I think is
So-
good since we were still hashing it out last week.
Yeah, you don't like to start a project with a change order,
No.
right?
Yeah.
However, as the project moves forward, perhaps that's something we can do in the 4th or 5th month in the project.
Okay, that's good. I was in favor of
Yeah.
it not being included, so that's.
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about that as well. My suggestion would be, we put the pavers in, we have a plan, and if the resident wants to donate a paver, we take the paver out, we get it engraved, and we put the paver back. So at least we have the pavers set already.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you think that it's going to take a year for the job? I don't know where that time frame came up in the contract, but have they given you any idea if it's really going to take a year for that project?
Yeah, the year was written into the contract by the engineer. However, in speaking with this contractor, they believe in to get this project done in 6 to 8 months, well under a year.
Okay. That's what I figured. So I
And some of
thought
that
that
will
was a bit
depend- some of that will depend on materials,
Of
and-
course.
and lead time.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any public comment? All right, Council? Can I get
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And you're still on deck. Don't go away.
Yes.
Agenda item 26, consider approval of the sidewalk capital improvements on Seabrook with Win and Sons.
Is this working, Jeremy?
Yeah, and,
Oh, there you go, okay. I just have a brief overview of our capital roadway and sidewalk improvement project, just to show where we're at. and what we've been doing. Thank you. So this is our roadway plan. We are currently, I know there's a lot of colors out there, but we are still working on Area 1. And if you look at the, oh, I can't see that color in the, is it yellow there? I can't see it. The completed has a yellow dot. So all the areas in Area 1 that have a yellow dot, those roads have been paved and completed. And if you look to the left side of that map, we obviously just finished El Portal and all the connecting streets to the south.
Are we doing sidewalks?
He's
This is
gonna do a
both, this
presentation
is
on
just a
both,
little
and then-
presentation
Oh,
on both.
sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay.
yeah.
I should-
This has the sidewalk in there as well. I'll go through it quickly. So just wanted to show you where we're at in the plan. We're still working in Area 1. The second item you have on your agenda here for road work, we'll cover Area 1 with the blue dots, and then we'll go into Area 2 in the green with the blue dots as well. The sidewalk, the still road work plans, these are the roads that we completed in fiscal year 21 and 22. We just completed this on El Portal. Obviously, you all know what it looked like before this project. I think it's important to show. This was El Portal Drive before the project. This is what it looks like now. In the roads that we continue in the Country Club, which will be north of El Portal, we will continue to install flush header curbs at all the intersections and all the turns. That helps protect the edge of road, protect the right-of-way, and also helps water run off the road as well. Any driveway aprons that are lower than existing profile, we'll raise those concrete driveway aprons as well to meet the road profile. This is our sidewalk plan. We are currently in the third year. We just finished in the green on Tequesta Drive from Riverside Drive to Seabrook Road. We completed that earlier this fiscal year. We rolled the money forward, if you recall, waiting for the contract, to secure the contract. If you look at the blue, that's Seabrook heading up north. That's what I'm going to present to you next. We're not replacing all the sidewalk, but we have about 2,000 linear feet on both sides of the road, east and west sides of the road. We'll replace any damaged sidewalk, any sidewalk that's not ADA compliant. We'll install ADA mats at each intersection, and we're also replacing the broken curb and sidewalk behind Gallery Square in the back. That's all village right-of-way and village sidewalk. That's the sidewalk that we finished last year. That's the sidewalk we just finished earlier this year on Tequesta Drive. This is the same sidewalk we just finished on Tequesta Drive from Riverside to Seabrook Road. And this is a little breakdown of costs. It's important to notice, important to point out the first item of the El Portal project, all the roads that we paved and all the sidewalk, we had a remaining fund balance, if you look all the way to the right, of $90,111.16. We were able to roll that forward into this next set of roads, and so that's helping us move the road program forward, where we're going to get Bunker Place and View and Club, and so we're able to hit additional roads on this next phase. And that's important. This way, when we come back, we don't have to drive over the roads we just paved, and when we get to River Drive, we just have a straight shot down River Drive. We're not going over, we don't have heavy equipment going over roads that we just paved. So we're carrying that balance forward. After I present the next set of roads, you look at the fund balance. We will have a remaining fund balance of $15,163 in our road program for this fiscal year. And the same with the breakout of the sidewalk that we just finished on Seabrook Road. That's Seabrook Road, and then also you have the pickleball courts that we're working on for Tequesta Drive. The remaining fund balance will be $11,000 and change in there. So that's just a quick overview of where we're at on the sidewalk and the road programs. And it's important to say as well, can't thank the manager enough for supporting me in this program. You know, when I got here, we really didn't have a program. And with the support of the council, we're now in year 3 of the sidewalk and the road program, which, I mean, I can tell you, being out there and seeing the residents and talking to the residents, I mean, they're really happy. You know, they really like what we're doing out there.
Agree. Okay, so we'll start with the sidewalk agenda item 26. So any comments or questions on the sidewalk agenda item?
What pickleball course you talking about? You just said pickleball.
Yeah, that's in that
What are you
fund
talking-
as well. We're
Oh, it's in
putting
the
an extension
fund.
on the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in here tonight, but then just showing where the money is.
Unless you're not sneaking in pickleball
No.
courts.
We already have that approved, and we're already working on it. Working on permits with Martin County.
Roger that.
Yeah.
Okay. At DeQuesta Park?
DeQuesta Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's nothing to twist.
Wait a second.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Sidewalks, no.
Yeah, just sidewalks. Okay, any public comment? Council, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Agenda item 27 is consider approval of the capital roadway improvement project in the country club community with Win and Sons.
I just want to make one correction on that. If you look at my summary, after we were able to move that money from the funds left over from El Portal, we were able to add additional streets here. So what I added on here was Club Place, Golf Place, and View Place. What I didn't list here in the summary, but it's included in the proposal, is Bunker. So there's actually 10 roads in this next phase here, and it's included in the proposal. I just didn't include it in the summary here. So it's just, that's that one road missing there.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
No, very excited though. Very excited. Residents have been, I've been here almost 14 years and they've been waiting on those west roads
Yes.
since before I got here. Very
As you-
exciting.
As you know, we did a lot of work out there, core sampling. We had our engineers out there. And this is actually outside of El Portal and the roads to the south, we have construction plans based on all those elements and the results we got from that, from the survey and the core sampling. And so we do have some money in here that you approved on the consent agenda for engineering services, just to be sure that they're following the construction documents.
A comment, and Doug, thank you. You mentioned core samples. We did about 25 or 28.
25, yeah. It's about 2 years ago now.
Yeah, and that's great information to have, that we all know about that, because during the last several months and walking through those neighborhoods and those streets, it was really brought to my attention, as Brandon knows, that a lot of people think that the roller coaster is really caused by poor core, but I'm glad that we've got that data with us to say that no, that it's the compaction, whatever reason it is that, but I saw that we are going to level out and everything, so.
Yep.
I'm glad that we have that information, because I think you're going to get a lot of questions like, why aren't we fixing the core? But if the
Yeah.
core isn't damaged, that's great to know.
Yeah, and not only did we do the core sampling, but we had Loxahatchee River District televise all their pipe in there. Because we figured if it's not the base, if it's not the base, we don't have a strong base, and we possibly have leaks on the sanitary sewer system. So they televise all their pipe. They do have some laterals off the main roads that they're fixing, but will not interfere with the project. So yeah, that data was
Okay,
important.
great, thank you.
Just one quick question. Is there any swale rework with the road?
No.
So, and
Just-
Kinley Horn's a great engineer, so I mean, but do you anticipate, have they considered any drainage or water issues like fixing the roads might cause if the swales aren't right? Because, I mean, we all know that not all the homes have proper swales and.
Yeah, they would have loved to have put that into the project. We didn't necessarily have the funding for that, so our main focus was to get the water off the road, rebuild the crown in the road, so it's going to roll off the road and into the grass where it belongs. And as I
Swale or
mentioned
no
before,
swale?
raise any driveway aprons that are lower than the road profile. But, throughout the village and the country club, homeowners have built out to the road in the right-of-way. So I know Marjorie and her staff are working on swale improvements throughout the village as well, right? If a homeowner is building a new spec home, we make them put a swale in. The contractor's asking, why do we have to put a swale in here? It's just going to sit here. It's not going to go down the road. It's going to take a long time to kind of take back that right-of-way and put the proper swales there. But for this project, what we're confident is that we're going to get the water off the road and into the grass the best we can. You're not going to have water pooling in the road like you have now.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, any public comment? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, agenda item 28, ordinance number 1-24, first reading of an ordinance to adopt overlay zoning based off the Tequesta Commercial Corridor Master Plan. And Keith, I'll hand this off to you, and I think you should take a drink of water before you read this one.
Come back in about 20 minutes and I'll be through with it.
Very long.
Thank you, Mayor. This is ordinance 0124. This is first reading. This is an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78, zoning, to adopt new overlay zoning that implements certain recommendations contained in the October 2022 Village of Tequesta Commercial Corridor Master Plan, prepared by the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, adopted by the Village Council on November 10th, 2022, specifically amending the following sections. 78.4 definitions, by adopting new definitions for formula business, formula restaurant, overlay district, facade transparency, and civic open space. Section 7896, discontinuance of nonconforming uses, by adding language to explain continuation of nonconforming uses in an overlay zone. 78-176, C1 Neighborhood Commercial District, by adding permitted and special exception use regulations applicable to overlay zoning, Section 78-177. C2 Community Commercial District, by adding permitted and special exception use regulations applicable to overlay zoning, Section 78-178. C3 General Commercial District, by adding permitted and special exception use regulations applicable to overlay zoning, Section 78-180 MU Mixed Use District, by adding permitted and special exception use regulations applicable to overlay zoning, and resolving conflict between MU zoning and overlay zoning in favor of overlay zoning. Further, creating an entirely new Article 6, Division 3, entitled Overlay Districts, with new code sections 78-201 through 78-204, adopting section 78-201, Tequesta Drive overlay, creating and defining this overlay district, providing purpose and intent, providing design, setback, facade, parking, formula business and restaurant, open space, and landscaping guidelines, providing for payment in lieu of certain open space requirements, providing for waivers, resolving any conflict between general regulations and overlay zoning regulations in favor of overlay zoning regulations. Also adopting section 78-202, U.S. Highway 1 overlay, creating and defining this overlay district, providing purpose and intent, providing design, setback, facade, parking, formula business and restaurant, open space, and landscaping guidelines, providing for payment in lieu of certain open space requirements, providing for waivers, resolving any conflict between general regulations and overlay zoning regulations in favor of overlay zoning regulations. Also adopting section 78-203, Village Center overlay, creating and defining this overlay district, providing purpose and intent, providing design, setback, facade, parking, formula business and restaurant, open space, and landscaping guidelines, providing for payment in lieu of certain open space requirements, providing for waivers, resolving any conflict between general regulations and overlay zoning regulations in favor of overlay zoning regulations, and adopting section 78-204, waivers, to provide a process for obtaining waivers from the Village Council for certain overlay district requirements, providing for an application, providing criteria for the granting of a waiver, providing that each and every other section, subsection, chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Keith. Lance.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. First off, congratulations to everyone. For the record, my name is Lance Lilly. I am a senior planner with Chenmore & Associates, as well as I am helping the Village Community Development Department. Before I start, I'd like to ask the mayor, how would you like me to go through this presentation? Do you want me to stop after each overlay like we've done for workshops, or do you just want me to go through the whole presentation?
I mean, Council, we've had many meetings on this. I think I'd be comfortable going through the whole thing and then questions at the end. Does everyone agree, or would you rather?
I'm flexible, but I'm fine if you want to start with going through the whole thing.
That's fine. I'm gonna have got questions.
Yeah, just run through the whole thing.
Okay. So just to start, this is, as Keith read into the record, Ordinance 124. This is the proposed code text amendment for commercial overlays based on the Treasure Coast's Commercial Corridor Master Plan. So just to start, in 2022, Treasure Coast came through and they did a 5-day charrette to obtain feedback from the residents in the community. After that, they molded this document, which is the Treasure Coast Plan that was adopted in November of 2022. Following that, there was meetings with Mr. Allen as well as Dana Little for the next steps of how the ordinance can be drafted and come to play. Presentations was then put together by Mr. Little to the P&Z board last year, March 16th. Following that, there were several meetings. As mentioned, one was May 30th of last year, July 31st, December 4th, and January 29th of this year. Following those workshops, we had a presentation with the Planning and Zoning / LPA on February the 15th of this year, as well as a LPA hearing for the recommendation of this ordinance. What were some of the key recommendations that was put together from Treasure Coast? They talked about district centers, frontage standards, civic open space, measuring of height, drive-through buildings and gas stations, location of parking, and primary streets. So since you've last seen this ordinance, since you've last seen this code text amendment, we've included some things to the ordinance. Previously, there was a 1250 square footage threshold for formula businesses and restaurants. That has since been removed. We've also included the civic open space to allow that to be counted towards the landscape open space requirements. We've also included the payment in lieu, which was discussed, and we have a threshold of 2 acres or less. And for developments in the mixed-use zoning district, we put a 2080 residential code clarification in there. It's already in the comprehensive plan as it is right now. We also talked about potentially including some type of caveat, which would be for specific circumstances as well as parcel sizes. Lastly, we included that there would be one formula restaurant in a development that is larger than 2 acres in the village center, and that would be via special exception, and those would be examples maybe like a Capital Grill, Roof Chris, Nobu, something like that. That would be not your typical like fast food restaurant, but maybe like a high-end, high-scale type of restaurant in that particular area. Following that, we brought this to the LPA, and LPA actually had a few recommendations for this council. They mentioned that we should update the definition of civic open space to include some type of provision for hours of operation in a sense. They didn't want just random people to be there past 10, 11, whatever time. They wanted some type of solidified number. Update the code, which was 2285 as well as 78204, to include some type of clarification that the Planning and Zoning Board also does make recommendations for the waivers to council. They wanted to reduce the size of the payment of lieu from 2 acres to 1 acre. Include some type of restriction that would say no artificial turf in the civic open spaces. Include a provision that the village council does not have to accept the maintenance of civic open spaces. And then also just include some type of quantified number of those specific criteria for the mixed use. So you're pretty familiar with this. This is the map that Treasure Coast put together. It had 3 overlay districts, one on the bottom right, one to the left, and one to the north. Our overlay district is very similar. We have the Tequesta Drive overlay, the US 1 overlay, as well as the Village Center, which is depicted in those different colors. First, we'll start off with Tequesta Drive overlay. In Tequesta Drive overlay, the allowable zoning districts that are there currently is C1, C2, and C3, as depicted on the legend. And what would the intent of this be? To preserve and protect the local hometown village character. In this particular overlay, formula restaurants would be prohibited. Formula businesses would be permitted, but via special exception use, meaning that it'd have to come before this council. We'd like to have a small scale character and charm, facades to be closer to the corridor, parking to be in the rear, and then to include some type of civic open spaces, landscapes, and tree canopies. Currently, this is what the code says as far as the C1, C2, and C3 zoning districts. As depicted in the yellow, the minimum front setback is 15 feet for C1, 25 feet for C2, and 15 feet for C3. As this ordinance is written, we are, instead of doing minimums, we're doing maximums. So the maximum would be a maximum of 20 feet from the property line. And then also we have a provision in the code currently that has it that you have to have a 15-foot landscape buffer. So essentially if someone were to come in tomorrow and say that they wanted to potentially put a new development in, they'd have to abide by this code. However, if they do include some of the frontage standards, then they can encroach into that minimum landscape buffer. These are the different frontage types, which were also depicted in this Treasure Coast plan. In Tequesta Drive West, porches would be allowed, stoops would be allowed, bracketed balconies would not. Forecourts, yes. Arcades, no. And shop fronts, yes. If you were in Seabrook, it'd be yes for porches. Stoops, yes. Bracketed balconies, no. They're pretty similar as you go through. Forecourts, yes. Arcades, no. Shop fronts, no. And then Cypress, it'd be no for porches. Stoops, no. Bracketed balconies, no. Forecourts, yes. Arcades, no. And shop fronts would be yes. And then for this, it would be for primary and secondary streets. Primary streets would be Tequesta Drive, Seabrook, and Cypress. Anything else within that particular overlay would be a secondary street. So then we talk about formula restaurants and formula businesses. So formula restaurants would be essentially a chain or a group of 3 or more restaurants in the nation, and typically it'd have one of 2 of these 3 descriptions. It can have a same or similar name, trademark, or trade name, standardized or limited menu, ingredients, food, beverage preparation, or it can have some type of similar exterior design, architecture, interior design, or uniforms. And then formula businesses would be an establishment that offers healthcare, medical, dental, retail, personal services, real estate services, and it pretty much would be a chain similar to the restaurants. On the left-hand side, formula, as mentioned, formula businesses are permitted via special exception use, and that's actually through all 3 overlays. And there is no threshold as far as square footage. However, on the bottom, formula restaurants would be permitted via special exception use in the US 1 overlay, as well as developments that are 2 acres or more in the village center overlay. So some of the examples of these changes. So village center and US 1 both have that mixed use overlay or mixed use zoning district that's there. Under the existing zoning code, the special exception, so these criteria on the left-hand side, if you happen to exceed 5,000 square feet or above, they're considered a special exception use. So let's say, for example, a barber shop wanted to come in and a barber shop exceeded that 5,000 square feet. Then, by virtue of the code currently, that would require a special exception use. And then also, fast food restaurants in general, as it's written right now in the code, are only allowed on US 1, and they're via special exception use. However, with this particular overlay, with the village center and US 1 overlay, any business that meets the definition of formula business would require a special exception use, no matter the size. Also, under the village center and US 1 overlay, formula restaurants is a special exception use for properties on the US 1 overlay, as well as developments that would be 2 acres or larger in the village center overlay. So I just mentioned this definition. Currently, our definition includes healthcare, medical, dental, retail, and personal services. So personal services, as I mentioned, like a barbershop, maybe if Supercuts or something like that wanted to come in, that would meet that criteria. However, it does not contemplate like financial institutions, so let's say Chase Bank or PNC or something like that. Currently, that's how the code is written, or the ordinance is written. I'm not sure if council would like to include financial institutions or leave it the way it is. That's just something that you guys could consider as I go through this presentation. So, formula businesses and formula restaurants. Currently, for special exception uses, it has a specific criteria that an applicant would have to bring before council, and they would have to essentially explain how they meet those criteria. If an applicant decides that they'd like to do a formula business or a formula restaurant, we have included this criteria, which would, 1, make sure they meet the special exception criteria that's already in the code, but then also include some of these other provisions, such as no altering of the village identity in that particular district, that they'd have to contribute some type of diverse or appropriate blend of business within that district, complementary of uses, be compatible, preserve the character, have some type of facade or design that's compatible, and then also the business corporate structure would have to have some type of harmonious aspect to that particular district. So as I mentioned, so we have frontage standards here. And this is just to show that if you happen to build at that 20 feet, that you can, that's the maximum, that you can actually encroach that 4 feet if needed. And then also as you go up in height, that you just have to push the facade back, depending on what level you go up. And then I transition to the US 1 overlay. In the US 1 overlay, the allowable uses in there is C2 as well as mixed use. Currently, this is the zoning site requirements. So the front setback is 25 feet for C2. Mixed use would be 10 feet or 0 feet, depending on if you're residential or commercial. And as I mentioned before, it'd be a maximum rather than a minimum. In this particular overlay, currently, the code only allows drive-thrus to be off US 1. And it limits gas stations to be off of mixed use or C2, but that also has to be along US 1. Common uses of drive-thrus can be used for fast food establishments. In some cases, there's also banks or CVS or things like that. With this proposed ordinance, the US 1 overlay would limit, it would essentially limit these gas stations to only the US 1 overlay. Also, drive-thrus would be permitted on the side and the rear of the building rather than in the front, and would have to have some type of screening from the public view landscaping. Drive-thrus would be prohibited in the front, as I mentioned, except for full-service gas stations or fuel stations, which then those would have to be required to be screened via landscaping or something from public view. And what would the intent of this particular overlay be? To encourage and provide pedestrian-friendly commercial corridor with enhanced physical appearance and clustering and complementary uses. Right now, as I mentioned, the formula restaurants and formula businesses would be permitted via special exception use. Rather, some of the other overlays, as I mentioned, would be prohibited. Parking would still be encouraged to be in the rear, facades closer towards the front of the corridor, and then have civic open spaces, landscape, and tree canopies. Frontage standards, off US 1, no porches, stoops, yes, bracketed balconies, yes, forecourts, yes, arcades, no, and shop fronts, yes. And the primary streets for this would be Tequesta Drive, as well as US 1, and all other streets would be secondary streets. And then we get into the last overlay, which is Village Center. Within the Village Center, you have the C2 zoning district, C3 zoning district, and mixed-use zoning district. These are the current site requirements. C2, 25 feet, C3, 15 feet, and as I mentioned, mixed use would be 0 to 10 feet depending on the use. And what is the intent for the Village Center overlay? To encourage architectural character and diversity of uses, such as residential, commercial, civic spaces, while providing pedestrian-friendly environment. Within this, essentially, if a parcel is less than, or development is less than 2 acres, then formula restaurant would be prohibited. If it meets that or exceeds that, then it'd be allowed via special exception, of course. And then formula businesses would be allowed via special exception. Parking in the rear would be encouraged, facades to be fronted towards the road, and then as well as provide civic open spaces, landscape, and tree canopies. These are the different frontage types within each one of those streets. I'm not going to go through each one of them just because it's a lot, but primary streets and secondary streets within this particular overlay would be Tequesta Drive, Bridge Road, Old Dixie Highway, Main Street, and Village Boulevard. All of the streets within this particular overlay would be considered a secondary street. These are just examples of the frontage types. You have shop fronts on the left, you have stoops, porches, arcades, bracketed balconies, and forecourts. Civic open spaces. So the way that we actually include in the ordinance, as I mentioned, there are various types of civic open spaces. So, for example, if a parcel can't meet, let's say, the square, then they might be able to take advantage of the plaza or the green or even the playground. So civic open spaces are privately maintained outdoor spaces which are accessible to the public, general public, and improve pedestrian environment. They're aesthetically pleasing and they serve as an amenity to the village as a whole. civic open spaces for new development or additions of gross floor area of equal to 20% or more of the existing building, they shall provide equal to 5% of the total site square footage. Landscape buffers in the front and the side may be reduced no more than 25% of each side to accommodate said civic open space. And as I alluded to earlier, the civic open space now would be allowed to be counted towards your regular site requirements of the open space requirement. Also, the maintenance of the civic open space may be dedicated to the village, or it might be the responsibility of the property owner. What's an example of civic open space? So we have two parcels here, one smaller and one larger. If we happen to use the parcel on the left, which is approximately 1/4 of an acre, they would be required to provide a little bit more than 500 square feet of civic open space, which would meet the options of a forecourt or a pedestrian passageway. However, if you have the plaza on the right-hand side, which is about 5.5 acres, they'd be required to provide more than 12,000 square feet of civic open space, which would meet pretty much any of the options that we provided. Another option that we provided was to include a payment in lieu. So hypothetically speaking, if a parcel they are 2 acres or below, then they can choose to opt into this particular program, which this program would allow them to essentially pay in lieu of designating that particular area for civic open space. That would be based on the appraised market value. And essentially the council would have to consider whether or not the payment in lieu would be the best served for purposes of the village. As well as this could be used for acquisition and or development of village parks, recreation, or land systems. And hypothetically speaking, if they'd like to, then they can also include a payment in lieu in conjunction with waivers, which I will get to shortly. As mentioned, we'd like to encourage parking in the rear rather than having a facade that is pushed so far back and you have all the parking in front of it. We'd like it to be more towards the pedestrian area or the corridor, and then have parking kind of hidden behind the building. This is just an example of that, where if you have a building that is fronting 2 primary streets on the left, if you have a building in the center that's fronting a primary street and a secondary street, or if you have a building that is fronting a primary street, a secondary street, and an alleyway. We've also included in the proposed ordinance here facade transparencies. So essentially this provision would be so we don't have any stark walls, blank walls. We'd like to have some type of architectural interest and have some type of windows or doors or something like that that would eliminate these blank stark walls and allow some type of facade treatment along these street frontages. And waivers. So if an applicant decided that applicant or a property owner decided that they'd like to take advantage of the waivers, which would mean that for whatever reason they can't meet the site requirements or landscape requirements, they can then apply to this council and request a waiver, which would be in conjunction with their site plan. All waivers must be granted by the village council in conjunction with the site plan, and also the waiver process cannot be used for the following: add uses that are not permitted under the overlay or zoning district, increase the allowable density or intensity, or increase the allowable building height pursuant to the site regulations. Also, the proposed code includes criteria for the waivers. And just to show what the differences are, waivers and variances, if people aren't familiar, variances are typically associated with hardships of the land. Hypothetically speaking, if you had like a circular shaped lot and everyone else had a square shaped lot, then that might be some type of hardship that you can't meet as far as site requirements or something like that. And typically, like I said, they are physical characteristics on the property. Rather, they'd also have to be approved by whether it be this council or the planning and zoning board, depending on the application. Whereas waivers are relief from the code, similar to a variance. However, they're typically associated with a development. And usually those waivers would be with the site plan, and that would be approved with the site plan. And as I mentioned, waivers cannot be used for additional uses or density, intensity, or building height, and they also have to be approved by the village council. So just to summarize the process, This was heard unanimously and recommended for approval unanimously by the LPA last month. It is before this council today, April the 11th. Depending on whether or not this council moves forward with the ordinance, it would go for second reading in May. The maps that were also included in this presentation are going before the LPA next week. And then after LPA, whether they make a recommendation of approval or denial, it would then come before this council for first reading at some point. And that is it.
Thank you, Lance.
I know it's a lot, sorry.
No, it was very thorough. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. So, council, open up for discussion.
Anybody else want to start?
I'll start. Why not? I know you guys love me. Thank you, Lance. I know we've seen this for like the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And we keep chomping through the details. So I listened to that LPA meeting. Was there any public comment made at that LPA meeting? By anybody? Business owners, residents?
No, not that I recall.
Okay, I don't remember either, I just want to make sure. I did pull some numbers today, just because I was thinking about it. We have 462 businesses that are registered with the village to get information sent to them, and it's been sent about this project or overlays 22 times to them. I personally have only heard from 4 business owners, and that's pretty much in the past week. I think I understand most of their concerns, and I've thought about them. I'm still thinking about them. But after we've been working on this for like 2 years and doing research and talking with residents and et cetera, I am prepared to vote for the first reading tonight, but I would like to hear public comment because I'm pretty sure we have some tonight, and then I'll give you the rest of my comments after that.
Thank you, Councilmember Brandon.
Free to keep going.
Okay. I first have 2 questions and then a comment. The first, you said high-end formula restaurant on the larger parcels. I wasn't completely understanding how that would be approved. If you could elaborate, is it the council?
So essentially what I included was, so a lot of people when they think of just a chain restaurant, they might think of hypothetically like a Burger King or something like that. So what we also were trying to include is just to say that if, let's say, a Capital Grill or something else that's also a formula restaurant, because they're chains, if they wanted to come in to that particular area, the Village Center or even US 1 overlay, that's also an option. To answer your question, that would also be a special exception use just like everything else, so it would still come before this council for approval.
I understand, thank you. Second question to follow up, if that's okay, Mayor. You said payment in lieu of funds.
Yes.
My question is, are those funds restricted to lands, parks, recreation, and to furthering or improving, or is it anything under the sun for parks? So current maintenance, can those funds go to current maintenance, or is it additional, and how are they restricted? Could they be transferred, really easily, or do they stay into that park fund?
Give me 1 second, I'm just pulling up the.
Sorry, Jay Hupch, Community Development Director. It says they shall be used for acquisition, enhancement, expansion, and/or development of the village's existing parks, recreation, land systems, or streetscapes.
And that was discussed at one of the workshops. Before it was strictly for acquisition, and then it was brought up by, I believe, this council that we'd like to also, if we had the existing facilities there, why can't we also increase them or enhance them, as well as maintenance and everything like that.
Okay, thank you. And then my comment for, and obviously I'm new to the council today. I've been tracking for many, many months. I understand, and I've seen the village communicates above and beyond the minimum requirements for sending out these items and many other items. So I know that we've fulfilled those minimum requirements. Talking to some of the property owners, I made the example. I lived in Germany. Maybe I wouldn't receive these communications. It turns out one of the property owners lives in Germany. I didn't know that. And I know that the 432 businesses, which was great, but I was also inquiring about the property owner communication. I think, so for me, I'd be currently at a no for a first reading until we could send out a direct letter to the property owners. But we believe we have a list of all that. We can easily send out a letter, and I know that's not required. I know the village have gone above and beyond, but for something that's going to affect this village for a long time, I'd be more comfortable with seeing a direct communication to those property owners.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, if I have a litany of questions and comments, which I can go through now, but it also may be some of the public comment that is here. So I'd like to, as Councilmember Brandon said, I've got plenty. I'd like to hear from the public as well. Then I will gladly give you chapter and verse of all my comments. So.
Yeah, I mean, I also look forward to hearing public comment. But, so I sat, I guess it was almost 2 years to the date when we had the 5-day charrette here. I was on the charrette host committee. It was my first official position, or whatever you want to call it, within the village. And this was something that was talked about quite a bit. I mean, it was something that our that our village, our community wanted, particularly these overlays. Obviously, at that point, it was just a concept. We hadn't really gone through all the details, but I do think that this is something our village wants. I think as a whole, and I can't speak for all the business owners, but from the public that I have spoken with, and that I interface with at the charrette, in addition to all the public meetings that we've had over the last 2 years plus, and then conversations. It does seem as a whole like this is something that our village wants. That said, I want to make sure everyone has a fair chance at this and to really have a chance. So I'm not opposed to Councilmember French's concept. If the rest of council is behind that, but I do feel this is something as a whole our village does want. So, and that's what we're up here for, right? We're an extension of our community. So, like I said, I look forward to hearing from public comment. That's that's the time to hear, and for us to potentially change our mind, and it does absolutely come into consideration. So, that's all I have for now, but looking forward to hearing.
A couple things. I kind of want to address the LPA comments first. I don't know if you want to pull those up. I don't know if council had any comments on those specifically, but the one about reducing the acre size for payment in lieu of from 2 acres or less to 1 acre or less, I would say I'm not in favor of that because I think it makes it more restrictive, which I don't think is necessary. So I'm not in favor of that recommendation. And then same with artificial turf. We have an ordinance on artificial turf, so I think we just go with that ordinance and don't put any more restrictions there. And then their 80-20 comment, I'd be up for workshopping that, but I don't think that that's something that needs to be tackled now with this ordinance. Mm-hmm. And then on the presentation, you mentioned business services are not included. I would just like to understand that definition, and then it's a little confusing because if you move along, like in the ordinance, it says, for example, it says business services excluding formula businesses. So I read that saying that they are included, but I guess the definition doesn't include them. So can you just clarify that and define what the business services are so
Correct.
We all are super clear?
Yes. No, I'll actually just read it. So, and I just put like a short blurb of it. So, business services, examples of business services are retail, and not retail, real estate, insurance, accounting, bookkeeping, financial institution, management, and consultant or similar uses. And then when you look at the formal business definition, it includes, for example, real estate, which is under the same definition of business services. Insurance, accounting, bookkeeping, which bookkeeping and accounting will be kind of similar. And then you have financial institutions. So essentially what I was saying was that in the formula business definition, it includes healthcare, medical, dental, real estate, retail, but it doesn't talk about the bookkeeping / financial institution. So what I was more so saying is that if council decided that they want to include those additional provisions at the bottom, which would be the bookkeeping financial institution, then that would have to be amended in the definition of formal business.
Okay, so if we want to include it, the definition needs amended. If we don't want to include it, the ordinance, I think, needs the excluding formula businesses next to business services needs stricken.
Correct.
So we just
We'd
need
have to reword it.
clean that up, whatever we decide to move forward with. The discontinuance of non-conforming uses, I don't know if you have a slide on that definition or that section, but I do know there's property owners concerned with the 90-day time frame there.
It's a hidden slide.
Next slide. It's on the, that one?
All the way at the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah, and after talking to Mr. Ileb over here, he mentioned that the 90 days may not be long enough. So after talking to Keith Davis, we considered that maybe 180 days would be more appropriate. And so we kind of recrafted what this would look like. And then we also said, put a new caveat that wasn't in there before. This is proposed language where we said, when a permitted non-conforming use has been replaced with a different use, or when it's been vacated, you can no longer consider it a permitted use. So he has a Wells Fargo. If Wells Fargo were to be replaced with something else for 2 years, you wouldn't be able to go back and get another non-conforming use to replace that, if that makes sense. But essentially, the 90-day requirement it's pretty standard non-conforming language that's used in municipalities really everywhere. A lot of times it's done to get some what are perceived as very undesirable non-conforming uses out, like a scrap metal shop, an auto repair shop. We don't really have that problem here. I think a lot of our things that we made non-conforming by the new code really aren't, that egregious. So, in our opinion, extending it to 180 days or even a year, seems reasonable.
Okay, yeah, and I know, my opinion is that a lot, this process started for future planning, for future redevelopment, and new development, and I think that, Jay brought up the one specific property, but thinking holistically, in every district, if it's a like-for-like service, that might not be a bad idea to have an exception there for a little bit more time. And that's how that reads, right? If it's the same service, it would have the extension, but if it's a different service, it would not.
Correct. You would lose
Okay.
you'd lose the grandfathering if you change to a different non-conforming use.
Okay, and I kind of like the like for like because we have seen buildings and there's future plans that they don't always a building's built for something but another use will come in down the road. So I think having a like for like is a good consideration. Again, I think this plan, like Councilmember Painter said, it does. The community wants it. They've been extremely vocal about that, and I do think this ordinance allows flexibility with us to work with the businesses and property owners. So I do want to make sure things like this, like it's not too restrictive. So something else to consider as we discuss tonight. And then 2 more quick questions. A civic open space less than 250. I know I've asked this, I think, every workshop with the art. Who is approving the art? Who is managing that? I know we're not hiring someone for art in public places, so how is that going to be handled?
What the intent was going to be is that they would put that forth with their site plan, and that would be, one, community development as well as staff would look at it, but then also go before P&Z. P&Z, for whatever reason, decided that they wanted to put some type of recommendation that they didn't like it or what have you. It'd come before this council, and this council would vote to, let's say, if they didn't like it, then they just remove the public art. There's no board or anything that's going to be created separately for that particular painting or sculpture.
So staff and then council.
Correct.
Okay. And then just with the waivers, the appeals process was removed? Because I feel like last workshop, okay. And then do we need waivers in the definitions? Because I know like a variance carries with the land, but a waiver does not carry with the land. Do we need that defined? The waivers is in the very back of the ordinance, but I don't know, it wasn't super clear, to me at least.
Mr. Davis, we didn't include that, correct?
I'm looking at 78-204 in the ordinance, the waiver provision. No, there's not a definition in the definitions section, so I'm looking at the waiver section.
And this did come up at LPA. Typically, a waiver would be tied to a development order, whereas a zoning variance runs with the land. So we could clarify that in the code. I don't believe it's clarified, but that's generally how they operate.
I would defer to legal on that one if it needs better defined there.
We can certainly add what a waiver is. I would say in 78-4 or 78, the new 78-204 waiver provision, or both. You could cross-reference it, explain it doesn't run with the land, it runs with the site, and it's a relaxation of any of the requirements except density, height, or whatever, I can't remember, lot coverage, is that what?
Density, intensity, height, or uses, additive uses.
Or use, which, you know, similar to a variance, you can't get a use variance. Density is set by your comp plan, so you really can't get a variance from that either anyway.
Correct.
So sure, so that's something we could certainly do without any trouble.
Okay, so something else for council to consider if we want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have one other quick question. Sorry.
Nope,
Mayor.
I'm done.
Okay. Just before we go to public comment. So I know you've mentioned this several times on the slides, but it did come up on several email submissions through our website. So do you mind just briefly explaining on the civic open space, the concept that it is counted towards the minimum landscape? Because I know that has been a bit.
Yeah, so this would just be an example of it. So right now, let's say hypothetically it's 30% landscape requirement. So the site has to have 30% of it being grass, trees, some type of vegetation.
Mm-hmm.
Before, when we had all these different workshops, we said that the civic open space, you can essentially take away from the buffers and you can put it in there. However, it'd be a separate 5%. So you'd have the 30% minimum requirement and the separate 5%. Now we're saying that that can also be included in the actual landscape requirements.
Okay. I'm good. I just want to make sure everybody else got to hear that.
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor, can I just address some of my comments based on what has been discussed? Based on the LPA recommendations, in our backup, and I apologize, not everybody has that, but I would say no to numbers 4, 5, and 6, what you had said. Reducing the property size from 2 acres to 1 acre, I would say absolutely not. Make it clear about the artificial turf. We have an ordinance for that. In the mixed-use district, there's a provision for new development 80-20. That's for the whole zoning. I don't want to start focus. I don't think we should focus on one specific property when the 80-20 or 20-80, however you look at it, is really for the zoning category as a whole. So I would say no to 4, 5, and 6. Lance or Jay, the business services that we talked about?
Yes.
Now, I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Business services would not be business, defining what that is, basically a B2B or business-to-business type transaction. More specifically, in this case, a bank. If a bank goes away, they're not subject to the 90-day or the 180-day, because if they brought in another bank, it could sit vacant for 2 years. Correct?
Like,
okay.
Yes. Yes, but there is, for the mixed use, there is a threshold for the 5,000. Currently.
Currently. Is the current code, is that a special use exception greater than 5,000 feet?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. And then I understand that, the overlays are something that not only I championed and I believe in, and in a certain extent, I still want them. I believe that's not only what the community wants, but I think we're legislating an issue when it comes to the formula businesses. I know when it came to the formula, just use that word, business and restaurants, started specifically from formula restaurants. I'm fine in the Tequesta overlay of not having formula businesses or prohibiting formula businesses and or restaurants. But when it comes to the other ones, I think to the village and the US 1, I think we're legislating something that we're creating a legislation for something that maybe that isn't needed. So I would be willing to entertain, and I also want to hear public comment as well. And again, we want to get this right. I don't think we have to rush to first reading today. You know, we don't have to have that. Or if there's going to be wholesale changes, we come back for another first reading. But legislating formula businesses, I don't think, is based on what I know, what I have heard, is really not the intent of the overlay. It was more so for the formula restaurants and keeping that fabric. There's precedent that's been set. Our legal counsel that educated us on this, you know, when this overlay started coming up or the formulas came up. So I think formula businesses, I think we can almost push those aside because I don't think there's been public outcry on formula businesses. I think it's more this formula dialogue came up more so with one or two specific formula restaurants. So formula businesses, I would be okay with even excluding them from the two, from Village and US 1, but I want to hear more on that. So I just want to throw that out there now.
Any other council comments? Oh, all right, I'll open it for public comment. Any cards?
Yes, John
John Eslip, 250 Tequesta Drive. Village council members, first off, I'd like to thank the council members and staff that was available to me this past week and trying to address some of these, especially Jayson just coming on board and that as well. You know, I hear the council talk about the length of time that you guys have been working on this, and I do understand it. I appreciate all the time and everything, but I don't think that that fully filters down to the people that this extremely big effect on us. And I think what Jayson and some of the other people have talked about is that, you know, I was at that charrette and I spoke with the Regional Planning Council representative. It was more a conversation about density. It wasn't a conversation about overlay. I don't know what other conversations about specific businesses, but I know I'm a very, you know, physical presence in this community, and it was not discussed in any great depth to me whatsoever. And I think that we need to pump the brakes on this thing, because I'm telling you, the clarity that I've asked for in this past week, there's still a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion, and I don't think it's intentional or anything like that, but I'm telling you, there's still a lot of confusion going on. And I think that needs to be, let's do it right the first time. And, you know, we don't have to do this first reading today. I know it's been a long time coming, but I just don't think this is the night to do it. I think that even the conversation of the council member that's been on there, I think that there's still a lot of ambiguity. It's still asking staff for clarifications. And I think that, you know, we need to really, you know, put the finishing touches to get this the way that it needs to be and make it legal and enforceable and fair. And, you know, I think that there still needs to be a little bit more transparency to the other businesses, because I don't believe they're aware of it either. And I would appreciate, you know, your consideration of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicholas Geisler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Nicholas Geisler. I'm an attorney with Bartlett, Loeb, Hines, Thompson, and Angelos. We are at 819 South Federal Highway in Stewart. Our firm has been retained by FP Tequesta Property Owner, LLC. The property owner owns a mixed-use parcel in the proposed Village Center Overlay District. Our firm, we're land use property rights attorneys. We get calls all the time for property owners who don't like various rules or regulations in their jurisdiction. And more times than not, our advice to them is, you don't like it, I'm sorry, you should probably vote in different public officials who will create laws that you like or work better for you. But when I took a look at this ordinance, I was really staggered at the scope and the restrictive nature of the overlay district ordinance. FP Tequesta did their due diligence before they purchased their property. They insured and relied on the land development regulations as they existed at the time of the purchase, and then they relied on those same regulations when they invested their hard-earned money into developing the property. This ordinance basically throws all of those reliances away in the trash. The requirement of the 80-20 commercial and residential use is telling the property owner what he can and cannot put on his own property. The arbitrary changes to the design elements on the property, the facade, the porch requirements, really don't seem to have any basis in any productive public policy, and are frankly ununderstandable for the property owners that I've spoken to in these districts. The setback and the buffer requirements limit the size choices for the property owners. The parking restrictions seem to be overly restrictive. Most egregiously, the open space requirements are functionally a taking of 5% of each of these properties for the town's use without the offer of any just compensation. And beyond just creating an insurance liability for these properties, it's also an unconstitutional exaction. And finally, the formula business requirement, it unfortunately runs afoul of not just Florida law, but also federal law. It oversteps the authority of the town. It steps on the federal Commerce Clause power in the Constitution. And when you take all of these things together, it's an undue burden on these property owners, and it's basically leaving them with no choice but to seek legal remedy in the courts. So I urge you tonight to take Councilmember French's advice, take a pause, talk to these property owners and the business owners individually, and don't let a court decide what's best for the town. Thank you.
Phil Perko.
Phil Perko, 300, 250 Beach Road and Main Street. You know, I'm not here to get into legalities. I mean, you just heard it. I was here. I've listened to a lot of the charrettes. I've read the charrettes page to page regarding the overlay. And I think right here, it's like I'm seeing a lot of confusion. And, you know, talked to John and talked to several people in this room, other people that aren't in this room. You have an overlay, and you have a code text amendment. Everything you're saying, Patrick, is true. We've been working on this forever. Laurie, it's been years. Wally, I agree with all that. But what you're doing is, when Starbucks came in, we all know the reality of where this came from. Starbucks, potential Wawa. I get all that. I get what you want to preserve. I live here. I have 3 daughters. I understand all that. But what you're doing is, you're going to make it so difficult for any of us. A formula business, I mean, the most credit-backed worthy type of tenants are the type of people we would lease to in order to get the project financed. So if you take that mechanism away from us, or not saying we would need it, but there's a strong possibility we could in order to do something that's forward-thinking, that's transformative for the village. And I just think that, you know, I just think it's wrong. I think it's the wrong approach. So I think Treasure Coast started off with an overlay. They had a plan, but there was no there was no restrictive formula businesses in that plan. There was none of that. It was about bettering the community. And I'm not seeing that. I see a code text amendment that's going into an overlay. So I think there's a big misunderstanding. There's 2 different things. You have an overlay and you're trying to inject something in it. And I think you really got to understand that. And I just brought something. I don't know. You can pass this around. This is town of Jupiter. They have a very important overlay they're implementing. And they mailed everybody a direct mailer, multiple emails. And they went out of their way. They got all the property owners in the building. And gave, I think, everybody about a 5-minute speaking at the podium. And it was great. And I encourage everybody to reach out to Jupiter and ask them how they did it, what they could do better, what was the perception, how did it go? Because something this important, and looking into 30 years in the future, is important. Talk to somebody in Carmel, in California. They don't have franchises there. What did they do? I think you need to do a lot more work. Appreciate it.
Hi, Jessica Namath, 20 Shady Lane. And I just am echoing that same sentiment of feeling like there's a lot of confusion. I know that I've spoken with numerous business owners that are on US 1 that would love to see the speed limit reduced. They're complaining they don't have a turn lane into their plaza. You know, and I'm not understanding how the drive-throughs promote walkability, because I think that that is we would love to see walkability. But I think that there's confusion with how this is written, and I 100% think there's confusion with this formula business. I think it was very clear we didn't want franchises. I personally am so confused with how a locally owned, like 3 Natives could have 3 locations and be in the same boat as like McDonald's or something. You know, I mean, that makes no sense to me. So I'm confused also, and I would urge you guys to take some time to reconsider this. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Pat Watkins. I was not totally familiar with this before getting here this evening, but just I would appeal to you all as a very long-time resident here. We worked for years trying to get the businesses to see Tequesta, to want to be in Tequesta, to have the reputation out, not just in our community, but elsewhere, that we were easy, not easy as pushover to work with, but reasonable. And I have the same sentiment just hearing this tonight, that why this little village is hurrying, it appears to be hurrying into something this broad that's going to affect all of our business communities, one way or another, eventually. I personally, I've spoken to y'all before about this, to be looking at parking in the rear as something of a goal, to me, is terrible. I mean, all I can see is walls as you go down US 1. I think it would look terrible. But that's minor compared to what you're looking at here. And I would agree with what's being said here, that you don't have to hurry into this. This seems like a transition for Tequesta that, at the very least, I don't think the general residents understand what it is. And I hear you saying that the community wants this. I can't wrap my brain around who. I've not heard this anywhere. So I would just ask that you take your time and not hurry into even approving a first reading of this or not approving it. I think you just need to take a good look at this again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any card? Okay. Any other public comment? Mr. Bradford?
Thomas Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail. I agree with what Mr. Sartory said in regard to formula businesses, and I hope you all would remember that when we had the first workshop that I attended, I made a comment that I had no recollection that we were going to do formula businesses at all. However, it's my personal opinion that formula businesses west of US 1 should have special exception criteria applied to them. And I don't know what the proper square footage would be, but you know, in the village center, I can't imagine a 10,000 or 20,000 square foot formula business being there. And I could imagine even smaller sizes would be more applicable the further to the west that you came. But it's really a matter of taste or some analysis by staff as to what that might be. I'm unclear what Mayor Young meant when you said something to the effect that you didn't, these are my words, you didn't buy into what the LPA had to say relative to the 80-20 in mixed use. Do you remember what, it didn't make any sense to me. Were you agreeing with what they said, or you did not want to pursue what they recommended? It was unclear to me. The last thing is, it popped into my head listening to the discussion about drive-throughs. And you know, it seems that you might want to give it a little more thought. I don't have an answer to it, but it seems that everybody's contemplating drive-throughs relative to a single building, okay? So in other words, think of the single building and that the primary street is in the front, and the thought would be that the secondary streets are in the back, so let's put them in the back so it's not seen in the front. But what do you do about shopping centers that have multiple business that are pointing in one direction or the other? Think about, for example, I forgot where, the Publix, where it's located, over there where the Mail Plus place is. That building runs linear facing US 1, but if you put something behind it for a drive-through, you'll see it when you're driving on Village Boulevard. So all these buildings will have different things like that to think about, and I'm not sure what the real intent was in regard to drive-throughs. And I think that's all I had. Oh, but by the way, Ms. Walker, I'm in favor of this being done because Tequesta needs to step up its game relative to its design criteria and its architectural styles to get in step with the rest of Palm Beach County.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Any other public comment? Okay, and just, I want to just clarify a couple things. I absolutely respect everything we heard tonight. But I know, at least for me personally, like I personally don't feel like this has been rushed. We've had many meetings on this, have hashed it out. I know there's been a bunch of communication, not just our public notice meetings, but social media, our newsletter, smoke signals. There's been, I know once I even had asked Jeremy to put on the police reader board, put that there's a workshop for this. So we really, did a lot to communicate these meetings. And I do want to say, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council is an expert at this. This is what they do. Many other municipalities have plans like this. This is not unique. This is not abnormal. And there is reference to formula businesses in their plan that we adopted. So that is why we started discussing that, because it was a recommendation. I think they provided an example from Stewart. So it was in the plan. It's not something that we decided to add, on the fly last minute. That wasn't in Treasure Coast recommendation that we adopted. So just want to throw that out there for record and clarity. Council, open the floor.
Yeah. So I will start off by saying this is why public comment is so important, because here we are in our first reading and we're just hearing a lot of this. I disagree that this is being rushed. I disagree that this has been undercommunicated. But what I heard tonight, I don't disagree with. I am in favor. If the last thing we want to do is be unfair to anyone in our village and create a hardship for them. So that all said, I am obviously the rest of council is behind this, but I am in favor of doing a similar process to what Jupiter did. Have a public meeting, let our our business community that owns property here come in. Let's hear from them. But I will say this is, I don't agree. I agree with you. I don't think this was rushed. We had over 15 public meetings on it. We put it in smoke signals at least twice. It went on Instagram. It went, but that's why we have public comment for nights like tonight. So I am willing to consider that if the rest of council can get behind it, and that is having some type of business outreach with our local business property owners, if we all think that that's what we should do.
Thank you to the owners that came in and their representatives that came in to speak for them. I'm happy you came in person instead of just emailing us. It matters. So I'm not opposed if we were to reach out to all of our businesses and coordinate a special meeting and go over all of this so everyone in the room understands, even though we've gone through this like we're beating a dead horse. However, if we were to go down that road, I want to make sure that we adamantly figure out a way, how do we know and make sure that these owners are notified and that they actually accepted it or received it. So maybe we do it by certified mail, maybe we require them to email back. I mean, I just don't want to go down a year of this and then have people still coming to us saying we didn't know. So how do we assure that it's not just the 4 owners right now that are upset by not understanding, and we make sure that it's the entire group? Are we doing this for 4 people, or are we going to do a special meeting out of the goodness of trying to communicate? And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure we're doing it for everybody and not just 4 people. That's it. I'm open to it, though.
I agree with what you said earlier on the Treasure Coast. They're experts, and I'm not an expert reviewing some of these items, so I like the feedback from the public and the experts and this council. I don't have any additional recommendations, just what I mentioned before, and to follow on what Councilmember Brandon was stating. I just make sure we check all of our boxes on communication. I know we've gone above and beyond. I'm not questioning that of staff or anybody involved. And I see all the dates that haven't met. Because of the long term, and I'm kind of repeating myself, I guess, but I just want to make sure that we do include those businesses and property owners in the discussion. Thank you.
I have a list of things, but if this moves towards another discussion or workshop, I would hold some of those. These are very specific and drill down comments, but about the public notice, I think that's something I'm going to bring up later on. I think saying that we put this on smoke signals, that we put it on Instagram and we advertised it. Some of the meetings that we were in, dialogue that we're talking about tonight dovetailed on some of those things. I think it's disingenuous might be the wrong word, but to state that we gave ample notice for very specific things, and we're talking about very specific items tonight. And the crux and the angst and the the heartburn that we all feel and that the public feels over this is on those very minute details that perhaps some people didn't know about, or they found out about it when they were staying at home, because they don't live in Tequesta. They watch, and watching and then not having the ability to speak up, that's unfortunate, but it's not everybody can stay here till 6 o'clock at night. So I have a hard time accepting the argument that we have, provided ample. There's been ample notice, there's been ample meetings, but there hasn't been ample discussion on the drilled down things that we're really, the minutia that we're getting into now. So I am 100%, and again, I have to state this, and I'll throw myself on the sword. I was a very big advocate. We went from 5,000 or 10,000 square feet down to my recommendation of 1,250 square feet. Part of governing at a local municipal level, again, I said it earlier today, disagreement is not discord. It's a chance to learn and to hear from other people. And over the last 90 days, since the last time that we had this discussion, people have told me their point of view. But I have also been equally saying, listen, I advocate for this. I want this to be an overlay. I agree with overlays, but maybe some of the mechanisms, some of the vehicle of which we're doing it may not be the best thing. And so while there may be 482 businesses in the village of Tequesta, I don't know what the number is. I would say there's 80 property owners. And while every business owner could be impacted by a formula business or a formula restaurant, I think what we're looking at is the economic feasibility of these property owners. So I want to make sure that we get the property owners here and make everybody aware of it. And the formula business, as I said before, I think we're legislating something that may not be necessary to legislate with some of these ordinances. Again, I agree with these ordinances. I want them. The public wants them. I think it's a great blueprint on what we know now 10 years ago, 10 years from now, when we may not be here. But what the public wants now and what this council wants now, I think this is a great way to memorialize it. But I think we need more information before we move forward. And I think if we go forward with the first reading now, it looks like we're just cramming it down their throat. It's the same, more of the same. And that's not the perception that I want to be associated with. And I said it earlier today, what's the harm in getting this right? Because if we start doing wholesale changes, then we're talking about things that weren't where we advertised. And, you know, so I would be in favor of what Patrick mentioned, and I think everybody along the way has said, and Jayson started with it first, is public notice. Is it a workshop? I don't know, but give people the opportunity to come in, get specific with it, and give them more than 3 minutes to talk about this. Because we are now impacting their ability. It's like for us to say, I bought my house because I know I can build up to 30 feet, a second story, and I want to rip my house down. Or say, I want to rent my house out to somebody, and I'm going to be a landlord. These property owners, and while there's some vocal ones that are here, but every property owner in the village bought their property based on the rights that they were afforded at that time. And I have a problem, a fundamental problem of taking those rights away without getting their proper input. And that's why I want to get it right. I want to get it right and get their feedback so we know that we're getting it right. And in a week that I can sleep at night knowing, hey, we disagreed, there was no discord, but there was a ton of education, and we may, at the end of the day, we may not see eye to eye, but we gave everybody the right to do that. Because I would never take away the rights of a property owner, and I feel that seems like what we're doing. Because they bought it under A, and now we're telling them in the middle of the game, we're moving the goal line on them a little bit. And again, I want these overlays, but they may look totally differently after we have this input.
Maybe some direction for us to consider is, and I'm not sure the exact right method, tabling this first reading and creating a process to direct staff on how are we going to deliver that communication, if the council agrees that that's the step they want to take. Being my first day, I do not know the method to table this first reading until another and communicate this to the property owners. So I'm looking for council for guidance there.
I just have a couple questions. The consensus is obviously to figure out another form, one more, whether it's one workshop, two, whatever the case may be. But I do think we need to define, and maybe we would need some staff recommendation and even legal. I think we should define tonight, are we going to do just one more workshop? Are we going to do multiple? What does that look like? And my personal opinion is it can't just be for the property owners, because say we have a meeting and just for the property owners and we allow them 5 minutes to talk, or we haven't done that for anyone for this whole process. I think it has to be open to all. Because I don't think that's right to have just the property owners come in, allow them to have this special meeting with more time to speak. We really have to be fair across the board and consistent across the board. So again, I don't know if staff or legal has any input on that, so we can maybe give you some guidance tonight on what we want this process to look like.
Well, if we're going to do this process, yes, you're correct. Anyone, I'll call it a stakeholder, needs to be given equal opportunity to participate, whatever the parameters are of that. You're right, it can't just be limited to the property owner, the business manager, the tenant, all stakeholders should be invited and given an equal opportunity to participate.
To be clear, Mayor and Council, my intent was not to exclude anybody. What I'm saying is it seems like an overwhelming process to invite 482 people and verify their receipt of it. But I think the real audience, while everyone has a point, the ones that are economically impacted by what we're discussing are the property owners. Yes, everybody should be included. And I would never exclude a business owner who merely rents a facility versus an owner of a property. So I want to be clear with that. I was not saying exclude the businesses and only invite the 50 business owners.
Well, and residents too, though. Like
Oh yes, but yeah, in a workshop
Yeah.
type environment. Yes, everybody to come.
Yeah.
Sure. Sounds like we have at least 2 workshops, right? Which is fine.
2?
I mean,
For length or availability, or you mean for stakeholders?
Well, I mean, it depends. Are we going to have one workshop that is just everybody, or are we trying to do more like what has been proposed, the town of Jupiter did, that was really geared more towards business owners, property owners, and then a second one that's anyone else? I don't know, but that could be a very big meeting potentially that could be 5, 6 hours.
I think it needs to be a special workshop for sure. Like we can't add it to our normal workshop agenda. So I would recommend one special workshop and have it inclusive. And I would be in favor if we think we want to do add more time and do like 5-minute public comment instead of 3. I would be in favor of allotting more time for everyone from the public to speak.
That's great. Yeah.
Are we able to specify stakeholder as in resident, business, property owner? Like, because stakeholders are, I don't know how to define that or be subjective for some people.
I mean, you need to be completely inclusive. It's really not appropriate to exclude any class of, whether it's, I mean, clearly your residents are impacted, your businesses are impacted, but at the end of the day, it's a public meeting, and if you're going to set this, I mean, to really be compliant with public meeting requirements, anybody from the public can attend, and I don't know how you would say, how you would distinguish, this person gets 5 minutes, this person doesn't, because, so I think you're gonna have to set this and just contemplate, public is invited, as in any of your meetings, and to the extent you're gonna expand public participation, time limits and that sort of thing, that's got to be across the board.
Interesting.
And now, question if you have one, or that you might not be able to determine that tonight. You could schedule your workshop and end up having this room packed and people pouring out into the lobby. One thing you can do is set a time certain, we're going to be here for 5 hours or whatever that time is, and then if you need to have another one, so be it. Alternatively, you could send out direct mail to every single business and every single property owner and have 10 people show up. I don't have a good answer for, short of somebody physically going out and hand delivering and speaking to everybody, and that's quite a heavy lift, how you can guarantee connection with everybody. We can do as much as we can. Clearly, the word is getting out. There's some folks here tonight, but I don't have a guarantee on how to connect with everybody.
So I think it's pretty clear. We want to have a public meeting. Let us staff, let us chew it up. We'll get, and I'll provide the information to council, get feedback, but I don't think, we don't have to reinvent wheels. I mean, we've done this before, myself professionally. Jay's got experience doing it. We can copy other cities. We'll get the word out. So I don't think we need to decide that tonight, but I hear you. We want to have a public meeting. We want to get everybody engaged and try to do everything we can to notice everybody. We'll do that. So I hear you.
All right, so staff can send out some, once you guys figure out what it's going to take for you to get your message out, when would be some appropriate dates. And I would suggest, I know most of us have jobs, so I don't know if maybe even starting at 5 p.m., like start an hour early, just to give us a little more time, so we're not here super late. So maybe time frame start at 5.
Yeah.
And then there was some feedback tonight. Do we want the community development department to take anything? Because they're gonna obviously, they have the ordinance. Do we want anything edited for the workshop, or how are we gonna handle that? Or we're just gonna have the ordinance as is and we'll workshop that? Yeah?
The business services, did we talk about adding that, or was that just an additional slide? Just a clarification. The business services?
That was up to this council if you wanted to include it, or.
Yeah, like it either needs added to the definition or stricken from the, for the ordinance. There's just like a conflict.
I think instead of maybe piecemealing it tonight, we keep this, we memorialize the feedback that we received, and then then just not to say start anew, but we know that that's already been discussed. I don't know if it accomplishes anything by putting some of that stuff in there, because a lot of these it was comments and observations, not definitive. I don't think we made any major decisions, so I think to go in and change the ordinance as it's written, it will probably be changed again, so I think this is in saving work and time if everybody's comfortable with that.
Makes sense to me, other than the recommendations that were presented as well, because I think there were some additions removal, which I did agree with, but having those, since we're going to go in that direction, do those need to be changed for the workshop, or are we leaving that as is? I was a little confused
Is
on
there
that.
consensus on the LPA recommendations to strike 4, 5, and 6? Sure. And then the rest, they can at least incorporate that for.
Keith, since those are a formal recommendation for P and Z, we should leave those as they are now. And then when we come back and vote on the ordinance itself, we would be either rejecting their recommendations or taking them. I don't think we need to cut them out at this point. But
This would go back to LPA probably for first reading, I guess.
depending on what changes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there are massive changes, I would recommend sending it back.
Right.
And I believe as the document exists right now, the LPA's recommendations have not been incorporated. They were provided to the council as a list of recommendations for you to either say, yes, we want that to be incorporated, or no, we don't want that to be incorporated. So right now, the document doesn't include those. You just have a list of what those were.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, can I get a motion to deny the ordinance? Or
I
how
don't
does
think
that
it would be,
work?
I think
No?
the motion, based on the discussion I've heard, the motion would be, technically, it's not tabling it, but to go ahead and place the ordinance on the table, not vote on first reading, and direct staff to work on providing notice to the community and scheduling, working with council to schedule a, what are we calling it, a workshop meeting? To further get more public input. So it sounds to me that if that is, if one of you is comfortable with that, you can simply say so moved. If you want to rephrase it, you're certainly welcome to.
Thank you, Keith.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other matters?
I did have a additional I'm sorry. You
No, go ahead.
Additional comment, yes. I want to preface this as I'm looking for guidance and historical insight. Again, as I'm new to this, I want to tread the waters with always an optimistic approach. During my council orientation, it was told to me that my discretionary funds are at a zero balance. I didn't know how that would be because I'm starting today. So I inquired a little bit more, and it seems that my funds were requested February 20th to be spent on the Tequesta Civic Association, the Environmental Committee, Tequesta Country Club Homeowners Association, Beach Road Association, and Jupiter Narrows. I don't believe that was the intent of these funds. There's no necessary policy against that, but it puts me in a weird situation as those funds, and please correct me, is why I'm inquiring, were more for Florida League events, Palm Beach County events, state of Florida, governmental events where I don't have to use my own personal funds, but we can pay for those events through discretionary funds and similar. So 2 points, if I need to be corrected and that is not the intent of those funds, please let me know. The other part is I recommend 2 action items on there. Number 1, if those funds have not been dispersed to those organizations, to cease the payment immediately. Number 2, we should probably think about having a policy internally on the intent of those funds, and if there ever becomes a similar situation, an interim situation, that we have like a pro rata approach or something similar. Again, it's first day, so I don't know how you guys have used the funds in the past. That could be way off, but I don't believe that those funds were meant to go to special interest groups. It was more of a Florida League of Cities example. So please correct me, or if there's no guidance and no comments needed, I would recommend that staff work on a policy to make sure that doesn't happen again if that's not the intent of the funds.
I agree with that, Jayson. I've used mine in the past that were left over, and I donated them at the end of the fiscal year to some nonprofits that were based in Tequesta. I think it's unfortunate that you are left now to govern for 6 months, or for a year until, I think are they renewed at the fiscal year? So you go through October 1st with nothing, and there's a whole summer full of opportunities to learn, to represent the village, and you either pay for that and you eat it, or you don't go. And that's unfortunate. So I do support staff crafting or asking staff, directing staff to craft some type of ordinance, and definitely on a pro rata basis, because I don't see how it's fair. Well, again, there was no policy, so whatever happened, happened. But this can't happen again, so I would recommend, I support what you're saying as far as coming up with some type of policy.
So I'll defer that to staff. You guys can look into that. And then if you need a
Workshop it.
Yeah.
To the extent we can share our discretionary funds, I don't know if we can, I'm happy to share them with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure my balance is full. I never touch mine.
Yeah, I only use mine for, like you said, league events, chamber events, that's it. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And I do agree with Vice Mayor that, you know, at the end of the year, if there's some, like, you know, local, like the Lighthouse Art Center, right? So at the end of the year, if there's funds, like, we can donate $100 there, or, you know, Bush Wildlife, I know council members in the past have done it, but it is more towards the end of the year when, you know, you have funds left. And one year I bought a bench for the community, you know, so stuff like that. All right, any other matters?
Yeah. I have a few things. So I know Chief Medina discussed it this evening about, which it's great that they pulled over or educated 7 of our village youth on that. But there is a very strong opinion out there about, you know, our ordinance. You know, the state that we approved our ordinance in late early 2021. The state allowed us to, or did not preempt us, and we made a decision to say that e-bikes have to be ridden on the sidewalk. Now, Jupiter, my understanding, is going to, like, as the chief said, going to letting them ride on the sidewalks. But like it or not, we've got 10-year-old kids out there going 30 miles an hour on a sidewalk. And we have people that utilize those sidewalks, strollers, dog walkers, things like that, that can't get out of the way. And I hate to see something happen that's happened in other parts of the state where people have been critically injured and there's been a death involved because a young child doesn't understand how to do that. And I don't know what the answer is. That's why I'm asking for my colleagues and the mayor to consider a workshop about just revisit. It doesn't have to be a long item. Are we happy with what we have? Is there data to back up that we are safer by having these children on these e-bikes on the sidewalk? You know, putting a speed limit's tough, but that's, I think, what the workshop is about. So I would like to have that, an e-bike discussion if the council would approve. And I received a resident email about I think it touches on 2 things: our public notification when an ordinance is put in place or properties are impacted, and our artificial turf. A resident reached out to me because he was unaware that the ordinance was passed about the 10% and where it can go. And he was in the process of ordering and getting everything together. And now if he would have known about it, he would have rushed to get it in like a number of people did. But I'm also just wondering what is happening with those houses that are going through it now, or residents that are going through it now, and finding out that, oh, by the way, you know, so again, it goes back to the public notification on something well, I agree and I voted for that, the restrictions to 10% and where they're located. I think there's some validity to having a greater discussion with some folks, and so I would say that, I don't want to debate the ordinance itself and how it was written, but I think the notice creates some confusion, and maybe there's nothing that can be done. But a citizen has done a pretty compelling argument as to what he could have done and why he didn't do it, because he was trying to do the right thing. And also, if we don't allow some, more, then we're putting combustion engines out there and we're fertilizing and all the things that we advocate against. We're encouraging people to do that, when there could be using their permeable AstroTurf. So I don't know how we'd like to do this, but I would like to see this on a workshop as well, because people weren't properly noticed. I'm curious as to what the impact that we're feeling now from that. Those are my comments.
Okay, so we're in favor of workshopping discretionary funds if necessary. What about e-bikes?
Yeah. I think that, I mean, truthfully, I don't have a huge opinion on them, but I do hear a lot about them and people having issues with them, so I think it is something we should get ahead of. And that would be the proper time to do it, is in a workshop, so.
It may not be a long conversation. I
Yeah.
think that our ordinance reads one way, and I would like to hear, is there data that it's safer to have children on the sidewalk? Maybe there's none out there, but I would think that some highway safety or e-bike association has that type of data that maybe we can find if it's available. I'm not sure if it is or not.
I'm fine if we want to talk about e-bikes yet again. I would request that Chief Medina is in the room for that conversation, so we can have conversations on how do officers do their job of judging ages, speeds, and make them a part of it, because they're the ones that have to enforce it, and they might help us legally understand the state law as well.
100% agree with you.
Perfect.
100%.
Are you in favor?
I'm in favor as well.
Okay, and then what about artificial turf?
I guess I don't want to say I'm confused. Are we going to be discussing notifying residents more about what we passed, or revisiting what we passed?
Perhaps that, we've got an ordinance on the books and somebody's complaining about that ordinance. We can't
So they
undo
know.
we can't undo the ordinance. So staff has directed me to say, hey, maybe we can workshop it and then talk about, how we noticed people. Is there a grandfather? I'm not recommending a grandfather clause. I'm not recommending a window of opportunity for the folks that weren't aware of it. But there's probably people that are coming to the village now with permitting requests for artificial turf that this is the first they've heard about it, because going back to some of the discussions we've had tonight, perhaps we could have notified the public in a different manner. And this is impacting all 4,000 residents of the 4,000 homes that we have. So I don't know if it's a workshop, or I don't know if that's something that this council wants to even spend any more time on. I just know that this is something that I support, but I also think that maybe we should hear from some folks. And I mean, it's after the fact. I get it. It's after the fact. But to say that we public notice something on an agenda doesn't mean everybody reads the agenda. Doesn't mean everybody understands what's on the agenda. Doesn't understand the impact of that. So while, yeah, we've already, the horse has already left the barn, so to speak. But I think giving people an opportunity to come in and speak and talk to us, I don't have a problem. That's what municipal government's about, solving problems with residents and constituents and businesses where the rubber meets the road.
So my only input there is, I do not want to revisit artificial turf. We had several workshops on that too. We can't be backpedaling on everything we do because one person reaches out to us. I absolutely respect this person's opinion and that they didn't know, but we, and then, well, we do it for this person, so if we pass another ordinance and someone's not happy with after the fact, we have to consider it again for that person. So I just think you run a slippery slope there. With continuing to revisit things. We're doing it tonight with the overlay district, but that's a massive, massive project and change. So I respect your opinion. I respect this resident's concern, but I worry we get, we're going to keep revisiting things over and over and over again, and we're here to set policy for the greater good of the village. And we do have a really robust communication and public process. I work in a lot of other municipalities. They don't do nearly half of what we do. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to put that 2 cents out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'd be in favor, just because it's come up at least twice tonight. I'd be in favor in workshopping our notice policies, but not specific to artificial turf. Like, just let's, clearly we have a different perspective than the community when it comes to how we notify. And, we're up here as an extension of our community. So let's talk about it, see where we can improve. But I'm with you, Mayor. As it relates specific to artificial turf, I'm not interested in revisiting that. The notice as a whole, I'm okay with.
So Vice Mayor, I agree with you. I don't see any harm in seeing if our staff can do another push of communicating the ordinance that references the artificial turf, because I do know that there's residents, especially with summer coming, they're starting to think about redoing their backyards while they enjoy them. I don't know if that entails a meeting, though, for us to request staff to do another.
So, is that something you think you could propose some more ideas, or should we workshop it? What would be best for
I
staff?
personally don't want to dissect the actual ordinance until we put more notice out, and if we get feedback from residents that there's some issues with it, then
This will be going forward, not for
I know.
what's been done.
I don't want to dissect it in a meeting. but I'm okay with if you want to re-educate what we passed. And then if we get a lot of feedback back, we'll go from there. Does that make sense?
I like the idea of just identifying the communication process going forward, so we don't have to deal with this
Yeah,
in the future.
I don't want to dissect the actual ordinance though, right now.
Yeah, because
Okay,
even
so-
though.
Not just
sorry.
yet.
No, go ahead.
Even though we know from working around Palm Beach County and other places, the village does above and beyond, I mean, way above and beyond. But that doesn't mean our residents feel that way, right? And up into grabbing them by the shirt and saying, you have to read this, right? Because we almost do that to a point. If we can do one extra little step that is acceptable and it's viable for staff, I'd be in agreement with that.
Okay. So
That might solve multiple things in one.
Yeah.
you know.
So what I'm hearing is a public notice discussion for ordinances and enforcement and different things like that, but not specifically on dissecting that. I just want to make sure I want to communicate
Okay.
that properly.
Yeah, I think we're in consensus on
So
that.
2 pieces to that. We already in the works tomorrow. Friday news, we'll have something on artificial turf, and we have something lined up for the smoke signals already on artificial turf. So that part's coming. I know going back to last year with public notices, we did have a discussion, I don't know if it's a strategic planning workshop. I know that was part of one of the initiatives on there, but I think we had a workshop about, all the stuff that we do. So it won't be hard to have that discussion. And I think if there's other means that we can do, let's do them. So I think it could be a healthy discussion. So we're all ears. I mean, anything we can do to get our residents involved, so.
Anything else? Okay, just have one thing, and I probably should have actually brought this up during communications from council, but I do want to say I attended the Beach Road Association meeting on April 1st, and it's always kind of a joint meeting with us and the county, and a lot of the topics they want to discuss this year were really all county matters with work paving the road, the parking that they're redoing on the road, some of the beach renourishment issues. So